Hey everyone, this is Silriven. I'm here to give a brief content warning for this video. There are points where I play clips which contain explicit, homophobic, and racist language, both in and out of game. Fictional rape is also mentioned at a couple of points. If you do not want to hear any of that, then please do not watch this video.
Okay. Hey everyone tuning in. My name is Ash, and you may know me from other videos I've done with the person with me today, Sil. We have done previous videos in the past about story in World of Warcraft, specifically focusing on Rathian and Anduin, stuff with Portergauge, who may know from social media. And also, yeah, Sil, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Sil. I write fanfiction and also sometimes record videos with Ash. And I am a little nervous about today's topic. I don't know. It's difficult things to talk about, I guess, and it's not quite the best political environment to be, putting your thoughts out there about some of these topics. But we're gonna give it a shot and have a little chat today. I was thinking about that today and I was like, oh, there's plenty of people who kind of make podcasts and yap and just kind of give their opinions about World of Warcraft. So it really shouldn't be a big deal that the two of us are doing that as well, adding our voices to the, cacophony of opinions out there. So why not? Why not be here today talking about queer topics in Warcraft?
Oh, ominous scare chord. Queer topics and World of Warcraft. That's what we're here today to talk about, because we've been thinking about talking about this for a while. And essentially, we wanted to just do a quick video. Like you said, so it's a bit of a rough environment at the moment, especially with definitely questionable people making comments about this. But obviously, as two people who are queer, we wanted to talk about something that's always been almost a shadow over World of Warcraft, but you could argue that for a lot of video gaming media. We wanted to basically talk today about depictions of queer identities in World of Warcraft, but also because that in upon itself wouldn't be very long, which is one of our issues that we'll probably discuss today.
It's a short list, but it's a longer list than I had pictured. I think in summary, they made great strides in having a lot of smaller characters.
Background queer characters, yeah.
Background characters, smaller quests, characters in books and short stories, things like that. But it's still dwarfed by the enormous list of straight characters or characters in heterosexual relationships or cis characters that are in the game.
Yeah, and I think that sort of leads me to the general introduction with like I said, we'll talk about both the depiction of queer characters in World of Warcraft, the idea of essentially the issues that has brought with the game, both internally and also meta-contextually, in a sense of how people have approached that. So both how the community responds to queer depictions, queer characters, just even the sheer idea of queer characters being in game, and also that, like I said, the issues that has brought with it, both in game and the way characters are depicted, just very vaguely upon dev sort of inclusion in that, and what Blizzard themselves have done to try and engage with that, or on the flip side, not engage with it, and also community issues as well. Like I said, this is a very touchy subject, but today we just want to really focus on talking about basically both what we've seen in regards to the inclusion of queer characters, how the game is currently after having, multiple expansions, and, how queer themes and characters are depicted in that, but then also talk on the issues of that as well.
One thing that I think is not quite appreciated or taken into account when talking about World of Warcraft and community and queer communities is that there are pockets of queer fans, pockets of fans that have kind of created these spaces for themselves to connect and kind of give support to each other and to share queer artwork and writing and things like that.
RP communities.
In the RP community, yeah, exactly. But the fandom by and large is overwhelmingly cis and straight, and it does skew very male. It's a different fandom experience than like Baldur's Gate or other video game communities. I'm thinking Baldur's Gate because I think that's like the biggest, like most recent one, which had like, you know, a lot of like queer art, queer pairings. There was like queer pairings featured in the marketing and stuff like that. So there's like another game. Shoot, this is like a great time to blank on that. But I think people associate fandoms with like mostly majority queer people, you know, making queer art, queer pairings.
You're probably thinking of Dragon Age, by the way.
Dragon Age, stuff like that. Yeah. And I think WoW is like kind of unique amongst fandoms in that it doesn't have a majority queer like audience. There's like a lot of straight people who do like game guides and lore discussions and stuff like that. It's kind of like a little harder to like carve out a space for yourself as like a queer content creator or just someone who is, you know, making fan works like art and fan fiction and stuff like that.
That's actually a good place to start. Let's talk a little bit about the history of WoW in a sense of acceptance and changing demographics within its player base. And you bring up Baldur's Gate and as a really good example. So WoW actually has quite an older skewing demographic when it comes to its players, which in turn leads to one of these issues that I want to talk about today. And this is also the history of WoW. So let's go way back to the beginning. WoW's community at the start, and I'm going to say this, while there has always been women who play WoW, people of color who play WoW, and queer people who play WoW, WoW's main demographic when it first launched, all those many years, was white, straight men, cis men. The most gamer bro you could imagine. That's what WoW's player base highly and very majority was. And back when WoW first started, a lot of those men were teens. And basically, WoW also represented that. Like, literally only till BFA, we had distinctively darker skin tones and things like that. It wasn't until BFA that we had actual, dare I say, openly queer rep, not just very minor characters in the background and small sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
There's like this list of LGBT characters on the WoW wiki that I'll link to in the description of this video. But basically, like pre-BFA, you do have occasional instances where there will be like really small side characters in a quest who will be like, oh, I'm a woman and I have a wife, or I'm a man and I have a husband. But there are also some more like what I think are like questionable instances of LGBT rep where it's just like the NPC in the game, who's usually like a woman, will flirt with the player character or give an affectionate kiss to the player character, regardless of if they're a male or a female in game. And I think that's just like a case mostly of the developers assuming that the player character is a man and that they would welcome an affectionate response from a female NPC, not that they were purposefully crafting this sapphic experience for female players, because you rarely have instances in that list of a man, you know, flirting with the player character regardless of gender, or a man giving like a kiss on the forehead or the cheek to the player character. You know, that doesn't happen until like after BFA. Then I think there are some cases where men will like flirt with you regardless of gender and stuff like that. There's also like the flirt emote in the game, which is like where your character will say like a flirty line.
If I wasn't purple, you'd see I was blushing.
The way you swing that hammer really stokes my forge.
The nights are so chilly on this planet. I'm the type of girl my mother warned me about.
Iron on the streets, volcano in the sheets.
Okay. For mating ritual, we will need 5 sheep, 1 gnome, and staff of domination. Put gnome in bag, beat bag with staff, and meet me after gnome is tenderized.
I think that's like listed on the list as like, oh, well, that is like gender neutral as well. You can flirt with like men or women. But again, I think that was like not something that was like purposely put into the game to consciously be like an LGBT experience until like at a certain point in the game's history where they actually went back and reworked like a lot of the flirts to be a little less controversial.
Is that a mana worm in your pocket? Or are you just happy to see me?
I like my women the way I like my fuses. Short, fast, and ready to blow.
I want you to. My...
Are you sure you're not part demon? I find myself wanting to stalk you.
You know, Worgen women have 6 nipples.
Hey, hot stuff. Wanna try breeding in captivity?
Want some of my jungle love?
When enraged and in heat, a female troll can mate over 80 times in one night. Be you prepared?
And a little more gender neutral and stuff like that.
I tend to agree with that. And I think that comes with a little bit of queer theory of like, and us both being women here, we know that essentially, historically, relationships between women have been seen as not aggressive, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things that's, I don't want to say accepted because it's over-sexualized and it's accepted in a way that creates a complication. It's a problematic sort of acceptance in a sense that what is palatable for a straight cis man? 2 women kissing is more palatable for a straight cis man than 2 men kissing because there's a certain level of inherent as what a straight cis man would see as aggressive towards him. That's why there's always, as a lesbian or as a bisexual woman, you do see that a lot with the representation of 2 women in mainstream media. And it isn't because lesbians are more accepted, and I'll firmly hold up a finger. It is not because of that. It's just because of that, what is appealing to straight men. When we remove the presence of the straight cis man from our lives, basically, that's when we become a menace because we're no longer centering our experiences around what a man finds acceptable in those circumstances.
So I have a question for you. I was going to say, because of this, I think WoW deserves some credit for having its first openly queer couple be 2 men, a bisexual man and a presumably gay man, Matthias Shaw and Flynn Fairwind. But would you also give them that same credit, or do you have a different opinion?
Well, let's just say this. So, and I was talking about like the history of WoW, and then we hit BFA. Let's remember how many years passed since the start of WoW. It had been how many years since to BFA? I believe 15 years. 15 years for BFA. And that was the first sort of instance of an openly queer relationship between 2 men, and also the addition of darker skin tones into game, etc. And I've got to say this, and I do go into this conversation being a bit of a hater when it comes to WoW's representation. I think they do bare minimum, right? I actually believe that for a fair few other MMOs. I mean, I'm thinking of Final Fantasy 14 too at the same time here. However, I need to give them props for that at least. This is the thing. I still think it was a calculated choice about what characters that they picked, as in they still needed them to be characters where they could have. Now, this is one of the issues that I'm going to bring up when we talk about queer rep in WoW today, is plausible deniability when it comes to being able to take this representation out, if so need be.
Right, for like international releases in countries where it's not quite as progressive as the States are.
Yeah, as progressive as the States are, we look at each other right now. So,
not saying that's a high bar to clear.
They'll call it, and I have the right to say this sarcastically as a lawyer, they'll call it for legal reasons. For legal reasons, we can't do this. And I mean, fair enough, you know, I'm not happy about that. But like I said, I'm usually a little bit like, I have a little bit of a sort of tense smile on my face when I talk about World of Warcraft's commitment to certain things. The thing is that I give them props for making their first, like very openly, when it comes to supplementary material, when it comes to depicting this shit between Shaw and Flynn. And it's good. I actually like Madeline Rue's book depicts them in a really, really fun way. And I really liked that book. And I thought it was excellent, may I just say. In game, after Madeline Rue's book was published, it took them about 2 years to even make reference that Flynn and Shaw, and I say make reference with the loosest terms possible here, to make reference that Flynn and Shaw are a couple in game. And this is where my tight little smile comes in. I'm like,
Yeah, if you only played the video game World of Warcraft and you just like did not concern yourself with like any of the tertiary material, like the books or the short stories, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Shaw and Flynn like don't really know each other or like each other that much, never mind have kissed or are in a relationship. Part of me thinks that they kind of like wrote themselves into that corner because Shaw's the spy master of Stormwind. So naturally he would want to keep like a relationship like under wraps so as to not paint a target on that person's back or make like a liability, for someone who wanted to like get at him. Well, they could get at Flynn and use that like against him.
Yeah, and not only that, I think that's where a bit of our conversation will head today. I want to read it with the most optimistic way possible. Like saying like that's a great way. It's like saying, well, of course, Shaw's more of a reserved person. He's always been a little bit like more reserved with his emotions, but especially so when tied into his role in game. But should we give that sort of credence to why they depict them like that in game? And that's the trouble, isn't it? It's always got that, all the queer rep in World of Warcraft comes with that, any sort of that isn't just a minor character in a small quest in this game. It comes with that little asterisk.
WoW has like found ways to communicate private, intimate moments between characters to the player character. Like something that they've started doing relatively recently is their stay a while and listen dialogues, which are these optional dialogues that you can activate during or at the end of quests that will kind of like imply that you're eavesdropping on what is usually like an intimate conversation between two characters talking about something that they, probably wouldn't like announce to the world or something like that.
I've often felt that I share more in common with mortals than with dragons, and feared that I belong among neither. I thought that here, in the land of my ancestors, I'd find something I was lacking.
So they do have ways of like doing that in game. They could totally do that with Flynn and Shaw. Have a stay a while and listen where you're like eavesdropping on some kind of like intimate moment between them, like reuniting after like a tense situation or something like that.
We'll actually talk more about Flynn and Shaw in a second, but I think this is the thing. You'll notice a trend basically. I guess people listening to us will also notice this trend that, like you said, a representation within WoW in the actual game. I'll talk about our main sort of characters here. We have Flynn and Shaw. We have Pelagos from Valtoire now as of the anniversary event in 2004, and also Chromie and Pelagos. And I think those are our main characters here.
It was really hard for me to kind of like draw a line between, okay, who's a major character and who's a minor character. And I would argue that like even the quote unquote major characters that you just listed are technically still minor side characters.
The trouble is that I consider main characters in WoW characters that have a role in the major storyline of an expansion for more than one expansion and also appear in cutscenes forwarding plot.
I think the word that Blizzard sometimes uses for these characters are quote unquote tentpole characters. Like Anduin and Thrall are both tentpole characters. They're like major characters that usually have a role in like, well, not like every expansion, but they're ones that players can usually recognize, ones that get like merch made out of them, ones that are kind of like the face of the franchise that will appear on like anniversary artwork, BlizzCon promotional artwork, stuff like that.
Yeah, and when I say appear in more than one expansion, it doesn't even need to be necessarily consecutive expansions. It can just be like, this character is an important person in the World of Warcraft, in the Azeroth.
Right, like Thrall didn't appear in Dragonflight at all, but like all stops were pulled out to like market him, and his minimal appearance, regrettably, in The War Within.
Poor Thrall. I have to bring this up in every time I talk. We don't even have to talk about Thrall today because, we are going to talk about Thrall today.
Yes, because he has a wife and 2 children and he has a nuclear family.
Essentially, poor Thrall. But yes, exactly. And I consider, like what we've just said there, those are the main characters. You know that there's something special about them when they show up. Like the cutscenes will have them talking. someone in a sense that forwards the plot. They'll reappear, they'll make cameos, they'll really be engaged. And I think out of all the air quotes openly queer characters that we've just discussed, then probably that applies the most to Shaw and Chromie. And the trouble is with Chromie being a trans lady, brackets dragon, trans lady dragon, Chromie noting that she was a trans in game was done very subtly. And if anyone queer, we're like, yeah, oh my gosh, Chromie is trans, right? We don't really need too much prompting to understand that.
It should be mentioned that Chromie being trans started as a fan theory, in that Chromie happened because Chromie's in-game model used a male dragon model, but Chromie is a female. She uses she, her pronouns. Her visage is a female gnome.
And her name too, Chronomu.
Oh, Chronomu, yes. Chronomu, I think, is a male.
Traditionally male sort of ending suffix for a dragon name. I was going to say prefix then, but it tends to end with those sorts of letters. But, you know, there's always room for adaptation with that. But yeah, exactly. That's how people were sort of engaging with Chromie in the community. It was like enjoyed by the community.
Often to ridicule from like other members of the community is also what I wanted to say, is that being like a queer fan is like a thankless task. You know, you kind of have to be prepared to deal with, I don't want to say anger, but like aggression, you know, people who are like aggressively like, no, this is not a queer character. Whereas the proof, you know, that this character is queer, you can't just like look at the model and be like, oh, that's a trans character. So people have had to like fight for their interpretation and their queer readings of the game, including Chromie.
Exactly. And lest I bring up, now this is going to be one of the things that I bring up about how Blizzard, and I'm like I said, I'm not naming any specific devs or that as a thing, but for example, in Heroes Storm, there was a line added before Chromie was confirmed as a trans character that again took a jab at fans in the community, queer fans, where it played it off like, oh, what do you mean? My name is, it can be a woman's name, a lady dragon's name. What are you talking about?
Everyone calls me Chromie, but my real name is Chronormu. Huh? No. It is not a male name. You clearly don't understand the intricacies of dragon culture.
While people may look back at that and be like, oh, is the devs having a little bit of a... It wasn't. Back in the day, that was a specific jab at fans for trying to interpret Chromie as trans. This is what I was talking about just before when I said World of Warcraft's history is a history of having white, cis, male, straight... If I said straight twice, they were very straight men, being the prime demographic game. And nothing back in the day was done with a kindness towards queer fans. So I want people to really keep that in mind.
Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me?
You look like a lady. A marginized? No way, I like the ladies.
What's estrogen? Can you eat it?
No. It is not a male name.
And I know that there was queer devs, but the trouble is that WoW's history is very much like its fan base, very aggressive towards queer interpretations. And this is the other thing too, where I was just leading up to Chromie's noting her comment of her being trans in game is very subtle. A straight cis man would not read that and be, this character is trans. He would read that and not know what the hell Chromie is talking about.
Do you remember the quest? I can look it up really quickly.
It's not even a quest. It's usually just a ask Chromie about her visage in game. I believe that was the prompt. It's just usually, I think you can even go back to like now and usually like if you can find Chromie somewhere in a quest or on the map somewhere, she will basically engage with your character like that and just do a, you know, do a little sly wink and a nudge to you, like, you know, this isn't the visage that I feel comfortable in. That's the trouble with WoW's representation, and it's much like Pelagos in Shadowlands too, as in you can miss in-game Pelagos noting his past life experience to how he presents himself now.
Right, it was very subtle. Hey everyone, future editor Sil here. So I would like to make a slight correction. The dialogue in game that reveals Pelagos to be trans is not subtle at all. It's actually very straightforward about what it's saying. Not only is it very easy to miss, like Ash said, it's actually very hard to find. Like seriously, I've been on like a mini odyssey trying to find the right conditions that the game needs to be in for this dialogue to show up. There's actually like a window of opportunity you have to get access to this dialogue. First, your character needs to have chosen the Kyrian as their covenant, and you need to have progressed far enough into the Kyrian campaign to where Pelagos is your soulbind. You also need to have unlocked Venari's quest and the Maw. Then, when you return to Elysian Hold, Pelagos will be standing here and he has some extra dialogue when you talk to him. There's nothing in the game that prompts you to do this. You basically have to wander around and have the curiosity to click on him to see this. But you can't have progressed so far into the story that Pelagos becomes the new arbiter, because once he does, he disappears from this spot and there's no option to ask him about his past once he's in the Crucible in Oribos. So, in that window of opportunity, when he's standing here, you can talk to him.
My ear is yours.
He says greetings, and then you have the option to ask him, do you remember your past life? He says, precious little in recent times. The memories fade naturally as my former life draws ever more distant, and many others I have let go of willingly to fulfill my duties here, except, and then we ask him, except what? Except for one. It can be difficult to think about. I know I should let it go, but I want, maybe need, to remember it. It is too much a part of who I am to forget. And then we say, I'm listening. I appreciate your listening, truly. As soulbinds, I know I can trust you. Pelagos takes a deep breath, then exhales slowly. I had a female form in life. I don't recall my former name, or even my race, but I never felt like my physical form represented who I was inside. It never felt as clear to me then as it does now. I struggled with that identity for my entire life. But when I arrived in Bastion, I became an aspirant that looked like, well, Pelagos gestures to himself. This, a male form. I felt comfortable, excited, like who I was inside matched what others saw for the first time. All of those feelings in my life finally made sense. I may not reach ascension as fast as some, but I am truly happy on the path I follow. Not many Kyrian discuss their past, or even remember them. I believe we have much to learn as people in that regard. When I told Clea, she listened, just as you have. And she has been as steadfast a friend as I could have hoped for, just as you have. Thank you. I am glad that I was able to share my story with you. So even though it seems pretty clear that what Pelagos is describing is basically a trans experience, I still stand by the point that Ash and I were trying to make originally, which is that there likely would have been a lot of resistance in the community, on the wikis, in the forums, to people reading Pelagos as trans if Blizzard hadn't come out and said point blank, hey, just so you know, this character is trans. That is what we are trying to do here. And actually, there's a forum post where I'm not sure if it was a dev or if it was just like, I think it was someone from Blizzard confirmed that Pelagos was trans on the forums. They said something about, I'll like clip the forum post and like paste it here and link to it. So there's a forum post where someone from Blizzard was like, hey, we don't want this to be misinterpreted. We want to be very clear. This character is trans. Like when they are talking about this, saying how they were female during their time on Azeroth, and when they passed away, they started presenting as male. They are a trans character, which is something that I want to talk about later, is how I know the devs have had a history of saying that they want to be quote unquote subtle with their queer representation in the game, but they really can't be in practice because the community puts up such a fight and like demands such rigorous evidence be presented for a character being queer or there being like a queer experience in the game.
And that's the trouble. This is the double-edged sword that Blizzard has finally honed themselves. They say that they want subtle representation, but they want that representation there. But their community on large is still a majority of straight, white, cis men who cannot pick up these cues. So therefore, when a queer player comes along and says, I can really read this character as queer, they're usually hit by aggression, high amounts of aggression. It's not just the straight cis men, it's women who are cis and straight. It's a lot of the community. It's people who may struggle like with accepting that there's more queer rep in here. And I'm not not pointing a finger and going, whoa, massive homophobes. It's a learning experience. You know, like even people who are queer have to unlearn your own bad habits and things like that. And that's a constant journey in life. Like I've talked about in other videos too. You just don't wake up one day and you're like, I'm not racist anymore. The racism leaving my body like a spirit, it's gone straight out of me.
Right. It doesn't happen.
Exactly. And it's the same with homophobia. And with all of these things, there's no way of being like, well, I wasn't homophobic today, so that gives me my little shiny coin to be homophobic the next day. You know, like, and it's the same with racism. Oh, I wasn't racist that time, but next time. And even that, if that's a conscious decision or an unconscious decision, it's one of those things. We just merely live, we sort of joke and make up on, we live in a society, but the thing is that our society rewards these sorts of poor behaviors. So it's a constant journey of unlearning that. And it's the same thing with being queer as well. Like, just because you yourself identify as someone who is queer, it doesn't automatically, this is a hard pill for many people to swallow, it doesn't make you automatically part of the queer community, because you can still undermine or aggress other people who are queer in your general area and zone. It's an experience of unlearning these behaviors. You don't need to be crucified for it, but it's something that people need to be aware of. Like, it pisses me off. I have a short temper when it comes to a lot of things. I'm not going to deny that, but it's certainly a learning journey. So you can see how difficult it is in the World of Warcraft community, where queer players and people in the community who want to have these interpretation are basically beset upon a lot of resistance a lot of the time. And people may say, and I've said this before, I've said, why is it so difficult in the World of Warcraft community? And I think this is going to lead my final point here. So I'll sort of finish my thoughts on WoW's positive parts of their depictions, but then we'll go into how this is skewed within game. But anyway, my final point is here. When you're a queer person in the World of Warcraft community, you're often hit with a lot of aggression, or at least a lot of obtuse sort of responses to your readings and understanding of queer characters and queer themes. Because World of Warcraft historically has had an overwhelming amount of people in its community who are not queer. More modern communities like Baldur's Gate 3, the more Dragon Age games, a lot of games, and I bet people in HR at Blizzard have been like, how do they have communities like that? I know queer people can be a pain in the arse sometimes. We're human beings. We can be over the top, you know, dramatic. Another 7 years of discourse, you know. But the thing is that what makes those newer communities so different from World of Warcraft's communities is there is a lot more fresh blood in the community. And like you said, so there's a noticeable amount more of queer people in said community as they're newer. World of Warcraft over the years has bled its queer community dry in a sense of not doing enough to protect queer players, and it's very much the same of other underrepresented groups in World of Warcraft's community. They've believed that they have the goodwill, but said people have had to find their own niche communities in World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft and Blizzard as a business do not go out of their way. They may do events and then do a post.
I don't even think they did a pride post or anything like that. Hearthstone did. Hearthstone made an attempt at a pride month.
Oh, that was the rainbow one, wasn't
the rainbow.
it? The rainbow colors.
I'll put a clip of it here, but it was basically like,
please post it.
Just, you know, Hearthstone celebrates all colors of the rainbow, and then it just kind of like did this like quick succession of like different art from the game that was like red, then orange, then yellow. There was like no mentioning of like, you know, what the rainbow represents or like why they were, you know, so, and they have queer characters in Hearthstone. Hearthstone has a non-binary blood elf character, Varden. Hello, Editor Silriven talking to you from the future again. So I just wanted to mention that I did find 2 more pride posts from Hearthstone. One does feature Varden floating around in this pink cotton candy void thing. And then the other, which features the rainbow card back, which is referenced as a Pride Month card back. Okay, back to the video. They just had an expansion where I don't know if it was confirmed or not, but there was a gnome character who I believe is non-binary too. I don't think Sean and Flynn are cards yet, so that's like a missed opportunity there. But they have non-binary characters.
Also, they have Gallywix in the rainbow flag. So.
Oh, right, yes. Queer icon Gallywix.
Homophobic gay man Gallywix.
But the main World of Warcraft account, I don't think they've ever done like a Pride Month post, like either on Twitter or Blue Sky or a YouTube short or anything like that. Like it's not really acknowledged in game. We don't have like a Pride Month holiday. There was like rumors at one point that we were going to get that.
Oh, I'll talk about that today.
Okay. I'll save that for later.
Well, yeah, exactly. And they don't moderate their comments. Like, I believe that there was only moderation on one post the other year. I believe it was sometime during Dragonflight. And again, I believe it was showing the queer Pride Month merch. So like, rainbow flags, trans flags,
Oh, they do. Yeah, they do like merch. So they'll have like Blizzard and like the trans flag, or the rainbow, the inclusive rainbow flag.
The progressive pride flag. There we go. And they usually do 100% profits to the Trevor organization Trevor project during those months.
Right. Credit where credit is due. They do like donations to the Trevor project and stuff like that for that.
I don't want to dismiss what Blizzard has done queer rep-wise. They have tried. I don't think they're jumping over any hurdle. They certainly have tried, and they put that in supplementary material, the actual queer relationships. I kind of want to discuss the anniversary thing too, but like I said, I'm not trying to totally dismiss World of Warcraft's efforts in regards to having queer characters here.
Yeah, it's just like in comparison to a game like Baldur's Gate, like they had a patch, like a big patch release where the big thing that they added to the game was they added more romantic, like little moments, like cutscenes that characters could have with one another, the player character could have with a character in game. I think like all three of the ones that they put out were LGBT in some way. Okay, so I did a really poor job of explaining what we're talking about. So patch 6 for Baldur's Gate 3 introduced more unique kissing scenes that could happen between the main character and their romantic partner in the game if they choose to have one. You can also play as origin characters, so one of the story characters, so Lae'zel, Shadowheart, Astarion, etc. And to advertise this patch, what Larian Studios did is they put out a series of Twitter posts that had videos of these kissing scenes, and they used kisses between pairs of male characters and pairs of female characters. So the clips that I'm going to show were officially put out by Larian Studios on their studio Twitter account and also on the official Twitter account for Baldur's Gate 3. They had Shadowheart and Lae'zel kissing.
I suppose you've earned it.
They had Astarion and Gale having a very homosexual moment together.
You are perfect. Every time.
And then they had that Astarion and Halsin. So this was like the official Baldur's Gate. It was either Twitter or Blue Sky. I can't remember. I will find the clips and I will add them to this video. But they were just openly saying like, yes, we see queer fans. We know you pair our characters together. We support you. We are encouraging this. We are putting this into the game for you. You are welcome here. You know, it was like, that was kind of like what they were signaling with that like mini, I don't know if you call it like a marketing campaign for that patch, but you know, they were advertising that patch with homosexual relationships. So that was something that was definitely appreciated.
Openly queer stuff,
yeah. You didn't need to like download a mod to like have Halcyon kiss Astarion while Halcyon is wild shaped in bear form or whatever.
Few mortals ever glimpse what you're about to see. But don't be alarmed. I'm here with you.
They love the bear. They love the bear. But yeah, exactly though. And like, I'm not even like indie games where creators have a lot more freedom in regards to depicting queer relationships. Like queer relationships can be diverse, they can be intense, they can be complex in indie games. And it's really, really beautiful, you know. But indie games are certainly one thing, but then it comes back to AAA. And I think that's the main thing that we need to sort of specify here. We're not saying that a queer romance should be this huge, big main part of the plot, but we want to point out the irony that a heterosexual one can be, though. That's the thing.
Right. We have a lot of heterosexual relationships in WoW that actually are a big part of the plot.
Yes. And before anyone goes, hold on, you can't say that about my bi king and queen. As a bisexual woman, as a very long time bisexual, sometimes you need to put your own personal interests aside. Anyone who's listening to this video goes, but you need to understand, a big corpo like Blizzard isn't going, we need the MF bisexual rep though, come on. They're not thinking about that. Their relationships between men and women will be purely heterosexual. The trouble is that being someone who's bisexual, you do need to put that personal interest aside. Again, this is what I talked about, learning experiences and growing with things. An indie game as a bisexual man and a woman, I'm giving it a thumbs up because I know that comes from the author's pure intent there and their experiences, usually sometimes often as a bisexual person, but they can be a lesbian or a gay man writing that, or even a straight person, you know, and they want to depict that sort of relationship with genuine honesty.
There's kind of that frustrating push and pull, which is like, well, you know, Thrall and Agra could be bisexual. And it's like, yes, they could be, but where does that factor into the game? Like, are we going to give Blizzard credit for that if Blizzard doesn't say Thrall and or Agra are bisexual, if neither of them have any like experiences with like homosexual relationships or relationships with non-binary characters? You know, can you say that's an LGBT story?
Yeah, and that genuine, I think you said this before, so you said that genuine want to depict that as well. A person's real life experiences in being bisexual and the depiction of that in fiction. For example, if someone is bisexual in real life and they've only had experiences with people of a different gender to them, let me just say, I'm bisexual. I've had a lot more experience with men than women in my life. It doesn't diminish my bisexuality, but you need to understand a person's real lived experiences are very different than a character that you are writing a game. I take a very much different sort of viewpoint and stance on an indie creator or like I said, they can be any sort of sexuality you could throw a dart at, basically writing and depicting a bisexual man and a woman in a relationship. However, this is where the difficulty comes to point here. With a big corpo, is this going to be a low-key situation? As in, they want the rep, they want the see, we have rep, but is there a genuineness to that? And I would argue that 99% of the time it is not.
Right. Like, for example, in the Loki TV show, so they had a moment where Loki is talking to a female Loki. It's like an alternate universe kind of set up, and you know, he basically kind of confesses to himself that, you know, he likes a little of both. He likes men and women, and you know, that was confirmation that he was a bisexual character, which had been a long running fan theory.
How about you? You're a prince. Must have been would-be princesses, or perhaps another prince.
A bit of both. I suspect the same as you.
but nothing ever...
Real.
So that was super exciting. It was super great. But a lot of fans notice that there isn't like a moment in the show where Loki has like a flirtatious moment or a relationship with like a man.
Or even a genuine connection with a man.
Or a genuine connection in the man, even though there was like ample opportunity for that. Like there's a scene where he has to confront like exes of his past, you know, and they're all women.
You conniving, craven, pathetic worse. I hope you know you deserve to be alone, and you always will be.
He has a relationship with himself, but his self as like a female Loki.
Two variants of the same being, especially you, forming this kind of sick, twisted romantic relationship. That's pure chaos. That could break reality. It's breaking my reality right now. What a incredible seismic narcissist. You fell for yourself.
Her name was Sylvie.
So, you know, it's not like with himself as a male Loki.
She's not my girlfriend. Whatever you want to call her. You're your female self that you have some demented crush on.
So the thing is that like Loki or like characters, fictional characters aren't people with like private lives. They're a character in a story and they kind of like have the attributes that the authors like put into the story. Like the example I love using is the book by author who shall not be named.
Oh, this is my example that I was saying that you brought up, and I was like, that is a perfect example though, because of ingenuous statements is what I'm going to say. Disingenuous, sorry.
Right. So Harry Potter, after all the books were written, or close to the end of Harry Potter's life, I don't quite remember, the author came out and said, oh, a character, Dumbledore, is homosexual. He's queer. He's a gay man. Hey everyone, future editor Silraven here again. Sorry for so many interruptions this video, but to quote one of my favorite YouTubers, I promise it will only get worse. So for clarity's sake, I am going to read from a Guardian article that recorded what was said during this Q&A session in New York. So this was an answer the author gave in response to a fan question. The question was, did Dumbledore, who believed in the prevailing power of love, ever fall in love himself? And she says to this, my truthful answer to you, I always thought of Dumbledore as gay. Dumbledore fell in love with Grindelwald, and that added to his horror when Grindelwald showed himself to be what he was. She says some other stuff about this, and she says, yeah, that's how I always saw Dumbledore. In fact, recently I was in a script read-through for the 6th film, and they had Dumbledore saying a line to Harry early in the script. I knew a girl once whose hair... ... I had to write a little note in the margin and slide it along to the scriptwriter. Dumbledore's gay. Just imagine the fan fiction now. I gotta say, I never read much Harry Potter fan fiction. I did read a little bit of Remus Lupin / Sirius Black fic, but I am sure that there is just like a huge trove of queer fanfic about this series, and this lady really, really does not deserve the hours of labor that have gone into writing queer fanfiction for her work. Anyway, fuck J.K. Rowling. So my question there is, does that, in retrospect, make Harry Potter a queer text?
And what do we say? No!
I think a lot of people, especially now in the queer community, would say emphatically, no, Harry Potter is not a queer text. Not in the least, especially given what we know now of the author's politics. So my question is do you want to give that author credit for writing an LGBT story if you headcanon or can see some characters as potentially being bisexual? Or like in this case, where retrospectively a character was announced to be gay when their gayness doesn't factor into the story at all. They had an opportunity to do that in the movies, in these movies that take place, you know, when Dumbledore was younger. They could have had that factor into the story and they chose not to.
Well, we know why now, don't we?
We know why now, yeah. Like,
and the thing is that looking at that is like it's such an interesting sort of case study about, like I said, disingenuous rep. I think, because it is very clear that the author of those books is a flaming bigot. Like, she is on fire with how much she fucking hates people. And I think it'd be very disingenuous to just take her to saying, yes, this character is gay. I have to say, I don't think you really genuinely that. So, and that sort of leads us back into, like I said, what we think as queer people, you need to sometimes put that aside. And it isn't exactly death of the author, but it's really examining your predispositions and what the author intended essentially here. And like I said, we can be like, oh, we can't call this a heterosexual relationship heterosexual. They could be bisexual. Stop. I always think to myself this when I hit these situations. Stop and think what the original intention of this relationship was. And it is not bisexual. Like I said, it's very different from a queer person in a community reading two different things, but you can't project that onto our text here, basically. We need to take it as it comes, essentially.
Yeah, it's a really difficult point because I really empathize with bisexuals, especially bisexuals who are in heterosexual relationships, you know, struggling to feel connected to the LGBT community. And I like get and understand all of that. But when we're talking about, you know, representation in media, I think it's like a different conversation has to happen around how does queerness factor into the story? Like, was that the author's intent, or are you just kind of ascribing more to a text than it really deserves? I guess, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. So
don't give the authors too much credit is like, I think the way I put it.
Yeah, don't give them credit.
Hi, this is Silvervin and Ash from the future. And I wanted to get us together to have like a little side conversation because I noticed a contradiction while I was editing the video. I noticed that like at the beginning of the video, I'm kind of complaining about how it can be really difficult for me or anyone else who's queer to kind of make an argument for a character being queer in World of Warcraft. Anytime you say, oh, I can read this story as like a trans story, or I can read this as a lesbian story, or oh, this character speaks to me as a queer person, you immediately have people saying like, where's the proof? We need like facts, we need citations, we need page citations, we need like quest notes, that kind of thing.
It's the Reddit take. The Reddit take, as I always call.
The Reddit take, yeah. But anyway, so like after I say all that, I noticed that when we were kind of talking about bisexual rep in World of Warcraft, I kind of took that stance. Like I was suddenly like, okay, like, but where is the evidence of Anduin showing attraction to men, thinking about men romantically? I was kind of complaining about the fact that people were I was basically taking the stance of the Redditor there in that moment. I was like demanding, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit with you, about that hypocrisy, because I clearly have some like thoughts that I need to kind of untangle here. What I've been thinking about is that you have straight people who aren't as invested in homosexual rep in World of Warcraft saying like, okay, like, but where's the queer rep? Show me where these two characters are kissing. Show me where they're flirting, that kind of thing. And then when you have people saying like, oh, no, this character shows attraction to people of the opposite sex, but they're bisexual, it's kind of like they're both taking the same side there. They're both arguing, no, this character shows heterosexual attraction. Anduin shows attraction to women. He shows attraction to women. He's attracted to females. So they're both kind of taking that stance. And there's like this defensive part of me that's like, why are you a bisexual queer person taking the side of these people who are very invested in Anduin being not bisexual, but straight? That's kind of like what it feels like, is it's like, it doesn't feel, I guess, fair for lack of a better term. It's kind of like, well, so Anduin only shows like attraction to women in game. Malfurion only shows attraction to women. Tyrande only shows attraction to men. It's like, okay, if that is like enough for bisexual fans, it kind of leaves me feeling as a lesbian or as like a queer person who wants to see more stories of like same-sex relationships or trans relationships or non-binary characters. Like it kind of feels like, why are we saying like, oh, Malfurion and Tyrande are bisexual, or Lorthamar and Thalyssra are bisexual? That's another common headcanon, is that they're both bisexual, but we don't get confirmation of them being bisexual, and we don't actually see them expressing interest in same-sex relationships, even if it's like talking about it with each other or something like that. It just feels frustrating to me as a queer person to kind of leave it at that, to just kind of be like, well, like World of Warcraft has all of these heterosexual couples, but we as fans can read them as bisexual, so we shouldn't ask for anything else, or we shouldn't
Yes.
Right. So I guess that's where the frustration comes for me is like, I don't know, why are we settling? Why are we giving Blizzard credit for writing all of these queer relationships? When from their perspective,
air quotes, queerest relationships.
I think that's where my perspective comes from on that, is that it's very frustrating to me as a fan and as a queer fan to kind of
settle on something like just that statement. That is a proper frustration. Obviously, I don't speak for all people who are bisexual here, but I'm going to talk about my perspective in that. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about my own biases here and how I sort of face those over the years and started to really examine how I saw myself as queer and my comfort. Basically, how I now feel very comfortable in my sexuality in a sense that I don't feel very undermined when people are talking about this thing, I'd say. So what I'm going to say is, let's talk about, first of all, the straight people who are saying that. And basically what you often have to put up with being on the internet and being queer. Like you said, straight people, when they see a man and a woman together, immediately only read those characters as straight. I know there'd be some allies out in the audience going, well, I am straight and I do not think that. That's good. Good for you. But I'm going to say this, a majority of people who are straight, who tend to look at a man and a woman, don't think, really loving this bisexual relationship. And it's the conundrum of being bisexual here. And this is another thing too. I'm specifically speaking in regards to what I'm going to be saying about media depictions in both independent but also big corpo like Blizzard is, like big media IP like World of Warcraft, and the differences and comparisons of that, because it's not clear cut in regards to, I personally think, depictions of bisexuality / pansexuality / sexualities that are open to being in romantic relationships with any gender. First of all, straight people, when they see a man or a woman, the default, like we've talked about several times in this video, is them being straight. There's not many straight people who look at a man and a woman and go, love these bisexuals. It isn't a thing. And you'd be fooling yourself if you try and argue different. We still live in a society that does view relationships like that. I wish it wasn't like that, but it is. Second of all, we also have straight people, as I call them, straight agitators. Now, they're the worst of the fucking worst and they really piss me the fuck off. They're the ones who you'll probably be seeing on the internet these days of going, well, I am a bisexual. And this is the thing, they're not. They're clearly trolls in situations because they then start the conversation with, I think there's too much queer rep. And you're like, okay, straight person on the internet pretending to be gay, get the fuck out. So you get a lot of people agitating on this point or being like, well, as someone who is like, who is bisexual, I think there's just too much rep at the moment and there's plenty enough of this and we need more men and women in relationships. We can put all these people aside. We also have a lot of straight people on the internet, and you'll see this, a lot of trolls claim that they are some identity which falls under LGBTQI+, and they'll be saying stuff like, there's too many gay people. I, as a proud gay man, don't want to see gay people. Or I, as a proud bisexual woman, do not want to see any more relationships between two women or two men. We need to dismiss those opinions. But as you've noted, if you've been on the internet and having a look at like a lot of conversations in spheres about queer rep, you'll see those people quite often. You can't take them seriously, is all I'm going to say. Like, anyone listen to this video, if you ever see that and go, wow, these gay people are like, no more queer rep, they aren't real. Because they're not actually queer. Those people who get online and actually say that are not. Who would do that? Go on the internet and lie. You just need to disregard those opinions. But like I said, we're going to work from the mindset that basically that a man and a woman in a relationship are straight. This is how straight people view media, and we have to admit they're the majority in these situations. Okay, now we get to bisexual people looking at this and engaging in media. And I'm going to say this, there'll be a time in your life where a lot of bisexual people will feel very othered by the queer community, or they'll feel like, I don't fit in, or I can't go to Pride because I've only had relationships with, if I'm a bisexual woman, with men and things like that. And I'm going to say this, I once felt like that. But there comes a time in your life where you need to put that aside.
I actually once felt like that too. Like I used to identify as bisexual before I realized I was a lesbian, and I was in a relationship with a bisexual man. And we kind of talked about, we felt like almost a little out of place at Pride, or how it just like felt like slightly uncomfortable. But that was honestly, like in retrospect, from my perspective, a personal issue that we had to get over. We didn't experience any hostility from anyone. We kind of felt like we had to choose, and we chose each other.
Yeah, it's a worry that you yourself have.
I don't know how valid that point of view is, considering I'm actually a lesbian, but that was something I felt at one point in life, so I feel sympathetic towards that feeling.
The trouble is that we always say, is this feeling valid? And I'm going to say this, and this is half in joke. Not all feelings are valid, but that's certainly a concern that you can feel in these matters. And the trouble is that, like, we have to realize sometimes that our worries are because we have doubts in our own minds that we basically project onto other people or the situations or the communities around us. When we feel particularly like insecure in either our own identity or our own place in a community, we can project that and see that there's like outside sort of like forces that are saying that I'm not bisexual. You guys don't see MF bisexual relationships like properly queer. And the thing is that is a complexity that exists in real life. And there will come a time in your life where you have to realize when you're in a relationship with, like, if I'm a bisexual woman in a relationship with a man, no one's going to hate crime me if I hold my boyfriend's hand. No one's going to hate crime me if I get married to my husband. The thing is that as a bisexual, you have to understand that you're secure in your relationship. Yeah, you may feel like, oh my God, those queer people were mean to me. You need to put that aside. There is a situation where you need to go, okay, I need to be real here. Am I making this about me? And that is the point in life where you're like, shit, I am making this about me. Like, okay, you run into a mean gay person who's like, wow, you're a bisexual in a relationship with a man. I would rather have 10,000 mean gays be like, okay, you're a bisexual woman in a relationship with a man, than one straight person who wants me dead. And that's the thing. As much as we laugh about the queer community, we're just catty. We can be bitchy. We can be petty. We can be insecure. But the thing is that it's usually very unlikely that anyone wants me dead.
When I was in a relationship with that guy, we never had to have like a serious conversation about like, are we going to come out to our families when I come visit for Thanksgiving, or something like that? Are we going to have, we never had that conversation. Like it never crossed our minds. Like same thing about like, going out in his hometown, like we could just go to bars and like be together and he could introduce me as his girlfriend. There was never that concern about like if it was like safe to do that,
And that doesn't reduce your bisexual identity. That's the other thing. Being in a relationship with someone a different gender than you or opposite gender doesn't reduce how bisexual you are in real life. That's the thing. You have to be confident in that. It doesn't reduce your queer identity.
Clearly it didn't for me because now I identify as a lesbian. So
that's the thing. So like we learn stuff as we go through life and we have different experiences and we see different things occur in our lives and stuff like that. The thing is that being bisexual, part of me that's bisexual that is punished by wider society isn't the part that likes men. It's the part that I could possibly be in love with a woman. And that's a bit that wider society punishes. And that's the thing that you start to learn as a bisexual as you get older is your insecurities of how the air quotes queer community will receive you is what you give back to the community. If you're just continuously talking about yourself, if you're very like, oh, well, other gay people were mean to me over this, but you never reach out a helping hand to the other people who are queer in your community. A community you're just not automatically a member of a community. You got to do something for your community in part. And that's often like making sure safety and security and support is there for our most members, essentially. I feel like that's very much a bisexual experience of like realizing that your queer identity isn't reduced or diminished if you're in a relationship. Like, for example, if you're a straight man in a relationship with a bisexual woman, or you're a bisexual woman in relationship with like another bisexual man, or if you're a bisexual man in relationship with a straight woman, it doesn't reduce your bisexuality. It 100% doesn't, because that's the complexity of real life. But you need to be confident and understand that in that relationship, you're not going to be subjected to the same sort of dangers as you would be a outwardly presenting queer relationship. And that's where you as a bi put aside your own insecurities of like, well, what will the other queer people think of me? It doesn't matter. What are you willing to do to protect the other queer people in your life? And this is the thing. If someone who else is like queer in your life disowns you over that, they're just a nasty person. That's the simple fact of it. They're just a mean. But I bet 100% that queer person isn't going to gay bash you. You're not going to lose your job over this. You're not going to be bashed. You're not going to be
disowned by your family.
Exactly. And like as a woman, and I know that, like, for example, a bit of a tougher subject, what about the sexual violence that bisexual women experience compared to, and I'm just going to say this, it's because, you know, it's straight men. They'll punish you no matter what your sexuality is. As a woman, there is a very high chance that you are a straight cis man in your life. And it's not always due to your sexuality. It's just because you are a woman obviously in a very patriarchal society where men hurt, unfortunately, and stuff like that. And it's very much a learning journey, understanding what aspects of sexuality are deciding factors and what is basically a bias. Like I said, you have people within your queer community who will be dickheads, but they won't be causing hate crimes towards you. That's the difference. So that leads me into my main point now about being a bisexual person and being comfortable in your identity, then to support other queer people around you and not to always try and say, what about me? It isn't fair. I've had enough now. I want my shit. Just relax. One bisexual woman to another, to anyone listening, let me just say, and to bisexual men who are, it's okay. The thing is, when it comes to media, now that I've said all that, as you as someone who is bisexual, in not just in indie media, it's quite different. And I think in indie media especially, people who are bisexual may tell stories any way they want of a bisexual experience. And I'm going to put my foot down. Like, you can have a whole cast of bisexual characters in relationship, like men and women in relationships as bisexual people. And that is cool. But we're talking about mainstream media and the disingenuous takes of both the company and its audience and wider community in basically depictions of bisexuality. And you have to realize that straight people and even sometimes other bisexual people will try and say that, well, this could be a bisexual relationship. But I want to say this, unless it's an indie piece of media where I will give a lot of for a bisexual person or a pansexual person to depict bisexuality however they'd like in their relationships, in whatever kind of relationships. I don't think we should give the same credence and the same grace to big media and their depictions of bisexuality, because they will use our sexuality as a way to still maintain, air quotes, heterosexual presenting relationships and try and sell it to you as queer media. And it's a rough pill to take, but it's true though. Like I said, it's the Loki thing all over it. It's a disingenuous depiction of our sexuality. And I think we should fight for other people in our community and queer communities, because they don't get hate mail when they depict a man and a woman kissing in a TV show or a game. There may be some people be like, wow, gay, a man and a woman are kissing and are in love. Oh my God, he likes his wife. Gay. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual death threats and hate mail over depicting a queer relationship. And that's the thing. You have to pause. As a bisexual, you have to be like, there is a difference between this big piece of media depicting a relationship between a man and a woman. Again, it's that really, really complicated, difficult thing is that I wouldn't take any sort of statement that, yes, these characters are bisexual without, in a big piece of media, and this is the thing, indie media, and like, for example, books written by bisexual people or pansexual people, and they're like, yes, and this is a relationship between a man and a woman, but they're both bisexual, I'd be like, cool, that's great, I love that. A big media, though, with a mostly straight writing team, like, I'm not too sure at the moment, like, on conception, I'd say the majority of people in Warcraft was straight as anything, and I'd say through a majority of WoWs, lifespan, it has been people who are straight writing this. I do call a little element of disingenuous writing if they tried to say, without showing any character, like the characters in question that they may want to depict as bisexual, not having either of those characters have meaningfully emotional relationships with around them, the characters of the same gender in a meaningful way. And by meaningful, I mean either like in a way that's like saying that I am in love with this person in a way, but I love the person more, or they were my previous long-term relationship, or even that like an implied sexual relationship with said other person. It needs to be more than, oh yeah, I like men too. Anyway, but that's beside the point. It's the whole thing of like the genuine depiction of a bisexual relationship in a big corpo media, I think needs to be very, very explicit about its bisexual leanings of its characters, basically. Like, if they want to say this man and a woman in this big piece of media, this huge IP, are bisexual, and then just never have them say or note anything in their past or their general romantic attraction, and even then I don't think I'd be satisfied.
That's partially what frustrates me so much about the resistance to Anduin, because it's like, what better way to confirm Anduin as bisexual than say, oh, he and Rathian had like a childhood crush on each other, or there were feelings there. You know, they could like still hate each other now, but just like kind of like slipping that into the game the way they slipped Visage Day into the game or something like that. But no, there's like so much hard resistance to that, and it's kind of like, why? If this character is bisexual, then like why is there so much resistance to it? Some kind of feelings, if there was like more than just like friendship between him and Rathian, especially at the end, like during war crimes. But there is that hard resistance, so it's kind of like, why if this character is bisexual, why are people, especially like the game devs and the creators, so against there ever being like
even an implication
of that,
unless it's a joke.
Yeah, unless it's a joke, of course. Yeah,
unless it's a joke. And this is what I mean about it being deeply unsatisfying as someone who is bisexual. I've seen enough of this basically through my life, in a sense of like people going, well, they could be bi, and having such shallow sort of, you see, the thing is that being bisexual is such a unusual sort of like experience. But I suppose it's the same for any queer identity, isn't it? It's always saying that like, I don't feel like I could ever get a satisfying depiction of my own bisexuality out of a media portrayal in a major IP unless it's very explicit that said characters had very meaningful relationships with both genders and it's shown in the storytelling. And no, that doesn't just mean a joke like, yeah, oh, he had a silly one-night stand, haha, wasn't that so embarrassing? Anyway, but on to the real romantic relationship between a man and a woman.
Her name was Sylvie.
And I'm like, because either way, and it's usually the attraction to the same gender is played as a joke. And like I said, that's what we were talking about earlier too, about how it's seen as so valid, the relationship between a man and a woman. It eclipses all other things. And as someone who's bisexual, I can feel that eclipse happening to my attraction to like women. When I see stuff like this, I'm like, they clearly think that part of me is a joke. And that is what society thinks. That's what straight people think. Even if you showed a man and a woman in big media and these guys bisexual, in someone who's straight's mind, they still consider the same gender attraction or attraction to other genders of the perfect man and woman composition, right? They will see that as a joke. They will see that as lesser. They will see that as, well, they just got over that phase, didn't they? It's very disheartening as someone who's bisexual, I think, seeing that. And like I said, it doesn't apply to real life, that sort of experience, because I do think in real life, if you're a bisexual person and you never date someone of the same gender, or if you never actually engage in a relationship with same gender, but you feel that attraction's there, you're valid. That is valid in regards to a sexuality. There is no basically thing that can take that away from your sexuality, because you're a complex person.
There's no contesting that.
Yeah, that you're a complex person who is a living, breathing human being, and things life are complex. However, they are not complex when it comes to people writing depictions in a big corpo piece of media. And that's what I want to break it down to people. I'm like, you yourself are a complicated person, but you need to understand motives and ideas behind written media. And the motive behind just saying, let's use it in Disney. The motive behind that is to escape criticism. And that is what I feel that a lot of bisexual identities are used for in, like I said, not indie media, not books written by queer authors or even straight authors who want to like, try and engage with like a complex queer character. They don't count. But a long-running piece of IP media with a mostly straight writing that IP's lifespan, it's disingenuous. I'm shaking my finger. The camera, we have no camera, but I'm shaking my finger. It's disingenuous. It's to allow them to escape critique of not including queer identities. Because the thing is, you can't turn to me and, well, okay, tomorrow World of Warcraft confirms all of its MF couples that are already established as bisexual. You can't turn to me then and be like, wow, World of Warcraft is the most queer piece of media that's available. I'd laugh in your face. I'd be like, fucking real right now. Even if like someone got up in front of an audience, all of our MF couples, they are bisexual. I'd be like, I can't agree with that. I can't accept that.
And all their couples, their major couples in the future are going to be MF.
MF bisexuals too. It's the most queer piece of media. No, it ain't. No, it isn't. It isn't, because it doesn't capture that genuine intention. The genuine intention of crafting that story for said character. It's disingenuous. And if it's done half-assed and it's just like, oh, yeah, well, the bi, you know, even in the future, it's like, well, show us that. Because I don't trust you. I don't trust this big piece. I think that's the other thing too.
That's honestly like where I feel like a lot of the Anduin is bisexual stuff kind of came out of, is because there was an author who's known for being particularly invested in like Anduin and his creation and his writing.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Came out and said, oh, Anduin like has been established to like girls. This is quoted on his wiki page still to this day, so I feel like it's okay if I mention that here since it's still cited. It's still citable.
Do people remember the follow-up when people said he could like boys too, and said person was like question mark? I don't understand. I think people forget that bit.
So there was like a bunch of queer fans who came up in defense of this author and said, well, Anduin can still be bisexual.
That was not going through that author's mind.
I just feel like it's really disingenuous to try and argue that this author intentionally wrote Anduin as bisexual when they wrote Anduin showing attraction to a female Draenei, or Anduin showing attraction to Aaron Stonehand.
Boobily breasting barmaid with huge titties.
Boobily breasting barmaid. Yeah.
But you see how it's an IP character. They probably like, we need Anduin. To these authors, you know, they're like, need Anduin to be watching women breasting boobily. And of course, some authors would be engaging with that with much more enterprise than others, but putting that aside there. But yes, I think that is my complex view. And I think a lot of people would disagree with me there. They'd be like, you're just being a mean motherfucker. And it would definitely be bisexual. But I tend to disagree. I've become rather suspicious in my age. I'm only in my 30s. I've become very suspicious in my age. And the thing is, I want to believe the best in these things. But I think this links back to what I was saying first of all. You sometimes see straight people on the internet role play as someone queer in like comments. Amazingly, they've never brought it up in their life. But as soon as like, I'm going to make a reference. Portergauge made a post the other day about wanting more queer rep in World of Warcraft, in a sense that it's declined a bit in the war with them. If you go to his thread on Twitter, you'll see multiple comments after multiple comments of people saying, well, I am bisexual, or I am queer, or I am gay. And I don't think they should have any rep. I think you're an idiot. There's already too much rep to begin with. We can't believe these people. This is the thing. A certain element of cautious disbelief in these statements of people saying these things and people's intentions, and understanding that people may be going on the internet and lying, may not have the best intentions for these sorts of outcomes, is a very fair position to take. And clearly it's not the same with like the writers as well. I don't think that fucking disingenuous, like the people leaving messages, absolutely vile messages on Porter's thread, but you do have to take it with a grain of salt in regards to representation and just playing off something like that. Like, if it was so true, if they were so keen on getting bisexual rep in World of Warcraft, why haven't they already established that for their already established MF couples?
Like Lorthamar and Thalustra, like that's like an extremely popular headcanon, fan canon for them, is that they're bisexual.
Why does it have to be, like, for example, with this, Anduin, why does it have to be a new relationship in World of Warcraft that is also an MF relationship and bisexual? Why can't we take one of those older couples? And I often see that it's a little bit of like resistance, like, no, like, oh my God, Ilaria can't have a crush on Zalatar, like, can't be like sexually obsessed, or at least like, we can't have toxic fury between Ilaria and Zalatar because Ilaria is already married. There's already hesitation against even the idea that these characters were not always and continually faithful to only one other person in their lives.
Or Faerun, like, why not confirm that Faerun and Indari, you know, were more than friends, that felt close. You know, they have like recent characters and relationships that they could have done this with, but they didn't.
And that's what I just want people to think about these things. Like I said, you don't have to agree with me. You could be like, biphobic Ash strikes me living my authentic life for 20 years as a bisexual. Everyone, damn, didn't know the biphobia ran so strong. I'm like, no, hear me out. So I just want people to consider this. And I know that people are like, well, you're just being pessimistic again. You're just being a grumpy old fucking fart about this. But I just want people to just consider the ideas conceptually that go into characters and whether a queer identity was ever a part of that. And when a queer identity like bisexuality is applied to a character in a relationship, for all intents and purposes on the outside to their mostly straight audience, just seems like another straight relationship, and they just throw as like a fucking chicken bone of, yeah, actually the bisexual. Is that satisfying for you? Is actual depiction in a big piece of media, does that satisfy you? Is that enough for you? Do you want something actually edible, or do you want scraps for the rest of your life? That's all I've got to say. People just need to consider these things. Do you want scraps, or do you want to have a seat at the table? Because the seat at the table is going to all the people who are straight in the community. Anyway, fucking stand up, bitches. Stand up for yourselves. And I mean this. And stand up, if you're bisexual, stand up for people in your community who are being harassed and like aggressed and not getting that same level of depiction as you yourself could see in other characters. It gets me very heated, so it gets me very heated. People go, oh, nah, it's fine. It's fine. If every main character this bloody thing is all MF relationships, and they give us a passing bone of like
Tyrande and Malfurion, that's enough. Thrall and Agra, that's enough. That's the apex of queer representation in World of Warcraft.
They're bisexual. I put a small like asterisk, like, oh my God, they are bisexual too. I'm not happy with that. I'm not, and I don't think other people should be happy with that either. And I'm speaking really from the heart here. We deserve more. We deserve to be respected. And like I said, we can get this from India. It's very, very different when bisexual or any sort of, any queer identity wants to write an MF couple who they see both having queer sexualities, you know, like they're both bisexual, they're both pansexual, or one's a lesbian and one's a bisexual, one's gay and a bi man. That's cool. I'm actually, like I said, you can't see me. I'm doing the biggest fucking thumbs up now. Like, yes, fuck yeah. But for mainstream media, though, we got to put our foots down. But like I said, we've got to stand up for ourselves. We got to stand up for the people who are more vulnerable than ourselves. And who's bisexual, you know who that is. It's the people who, if two men or two women hold their hands and they get death threats and rape threats, we need to stand up for that depiction. And to people who are maybe straight and who may be tickled by listening into this conversation, and you want to be an ally, remember, you can't just call yourself an ally. You need to make sure you protect people who are vulnerable in your community. That's the main thing. You got to stand up. All those bitches, we all need to stand the fuck up, you know? We can't just continuously be like only thinking of ourselves or only thinking about a depiction that's important to us that is accepted by wider society, by straight people. If you are fighting tooth and nail for a depiction that straight people would not bat an eyelid at, homie, you got to find a different fight to fight. For like mainstream media, you got to find something else to fight for, because you're not standing up, you're just sitting down. You got to do things that scare straight people. It's as simple as two men holding hands or two women holding hands, or a person who's trans. People who are trans and want to write trans stories can have the messiest trans characters ever. I love messy fucking trans characters. Personally, I just love it. But in mainstream media, we got to be strict on these motherfuckers. We want our trans people to be happy and to be loved by the people around them. It may seem vanilla as fuck, but it's like, this is like the bare bones of fighting for depiction at the moment with mainstream stuff. Or else, like I said, we'll always be delegated to, well, go find, you know, your own space, and those will be taken away from you.
Yeah, WoW is a game that like has a history of like using queer people as like a joke before actually seriously depicting them in games. So it's like we need to kind of hold them to a higher standard to kind of like make amends for cultivating this like petri dish of homophobic behavior and ideas.
And the community too. I talked about this earlier, or like some other time in this recording. You see the community you debated. Go on Twitter and look at the comments in Portergauge's comment section on that. Hey guys, I think there should just be a few more queer characters in World of Warcraft because the War Within was a little bit low.
Or have the balls to make like a Pride Month post and then just take a good long look at like the comments that accumulate there.
This is the community that you have grown in your garden. And like I said, I may be a mean gay person, but at least I have my fucking morals. We both have our morals.
What is that tweet that's like, sorry, all of the compassionate, understanding queer people are dead because they were bullied to death. You just are left with us cockroaches now.
It's very much the WoW experience being a queer person. You have to get so tough in this community, and I don't have patience.
Like, sorry, all of the kind, understanding, compassionate queer people were bullied out of this community. You're just left with us cockroach motherfuckers now.
I mean, their community is not perfect either, but most of them went to Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Not a perfect community, but goddamn, they don't have like waves after waves of like hate comments on like any slightly gay posts at their social, and they have no gay people. I'm still tearing Final Fantasy 14 a new one for that. Like Guild Wars 2, where at? Guild Wars 2 is still the stock standard for me. Actually having a queer kiss and a cutscene between two women and actually making their relationship,
and then the devs actually going to like defend that queer relationship on the forums and probably social media too, you know,
and having their relationship face difficulties and positives in game. Like they had like a little like separation, well, not really a separation, but part where Casimir wasn't in like the main story and Joy was finding it difficult to communicate with her, and like the relationship was very rocky and stuff because of like revelations, but it ended up with them getting married and like them complimenting each other, and like, oh, what a time. So it can be done. But anyway, like I said, WoW has had to like deal with the community it's fostered, and I guess now that they're suffering the consequence of this. So, but we're not going to suffer it for them. And like I said, I don't suffer fools. Clowns online. I see too many gay people on my feed. Well, fucking suck a lemon.
I feel like that was like the general reaction when Randuin had its resurgence after Rathian came back, is just people who are just very cranky at seeing so much gay art on their feed.
Can't they just be friends? I mean, I like it. It's all good.
Can't they just be friends? The sanctimony of male friendship. Won't someone think of it?
I don't mind the couple. I really like it. But wouldn't it be better if both of them were with women, though? How can you tell whether I like a ship or not? I don't know, bitch. It seems pretty clear to me. I'm no fucking fool. Like, people do try and play you for a fool when you're queer, by the way, online. They're like, oh my god, I didn't mean that. Okay, motherfucker. They really do think you're born fucking yesterday. Especially people who are straight. They really do think that you're born yesterday by going, oh my god, it's a fine relationship. But wouldn't it be better if there were both relationships with women? Because you seriously don't see enough relationships with men with women, and they actually like love each other and are friends. Bitch, they're everywhere! They're everywhere! My fucking god!
Oh yeah, we definitely don't see enough of that in WoW in particular.
Oh my god. Oh, because he's a gentleman and he has a loving relationship with his wife. I hate that argument. Because people act like, oh, there's no good relationships between men and women. Bitch, look at Mulder and Scully. I know I bring them up every single... Saying that there's no good relationships between gentlemen standing men on TV with women is...
Or Titanic, Jack Dawson and Rose. Like, that's the movie I always go back to because it was so big and so popular, like, back in the day.
One of the biggest movies in the world.
Of
One
all
of the biggest movies in the
time.
world. We could be here... we could be here for days. Literal hours of thousands of hours listing good relationships between men and women in media. Like how people just say, well, it's misogyny. Not every misogyny. It's just a way for people to say, how about if we have less gay relationships and focus on healthy relationships between men and women? No, actually, I think relationships between men and women should be more messed up, but I think it should be women torturing men. It's equality. It's equality. Ariana Grande, it's equality. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Like I said, complex, but it's my sort of lived experience. And to anyone bisexual listening, be confident in your sexuality. Like, don't worry about it. No one is judging you. Like, if you reach out to your community, people aren't going to judge you. If you're very self-obsessed and you're just continuously thinking about what people think of you rather than extending a hand, you're going to have a very different experience. Community is what you put in, you get out of. So just think about that. Anyway, that's my point of view. So
thank you very much for sharing your thoughts.
There we go.
Would now be a good time to go through the list of the long list of heterosexual relationships that I pulled up.
I'll just say this too. Like I said, it's very important to support other queer people when they feel that they're being talked over in these sorts of situations. Like I said, real life relationships and your sexuality in real life does need to be placed aside sometimes when it comes to media analysis. And the thing is that like with those sorts of things, and I'll speak as a bisexual to any bisexuals listening, it doesn't diminish your sexuality, what relationship you're in. But you need to understand when we look at media, we have to say, as a queer community, if you want to be like, I'm a part of the queer community, you need to put aside what you want on a personal level and see what will help support and protect the most vulnerable parts of your community. No one's going to be up in arms about a man. It's a sad fact of the day, but a man and a man or a woman, people are going to get very aggressive about it, and that's what you need to do. How can I protect that?
Yeah, heterosexual relationships are kind of the status quo, especially in a story like WoW.
And I will just say this because we hadn't brought it up as well. Trans relationships too are on a different sort of, if it's a trans person in a relationship with someone the opposite gender than them, like a trans woman in a relationship with a man, or a trans man in a relationship woman, that obviously doesn't count because gender is a whole different aspect in regards to that too. But I'm going to say this, I don't think any of these characters trans, it was intentionally trans in the author's mind in World of Warcraft either. Like I said, even Chromie, the devs resisted that.
No, it is not a male name.
Until I believe it was BFF. No, not even later than BFF. I think that was in Shadowlands, wasn't it? So,
when did Folk and Fairy Tales of Azeroth come out?
I think it was in Shadowlands.
I think so too. I was going to say that like Shadowlands, I think was like the first. Oh no, apart from BFA, that was when Fairshaw became canon.
Yeah, Fairshaw and BFA. Chromie confirmed trends in Shadowlands. Then Pelagos, I believe.
Okay, so Folk and Fairy Tales of Azeroth, which was the short story collection that had the short story, which was about Chronormu becoming Chromie, came out in 2021.
Which I think was Shadowlands, wasn't it? Because it was just before Dragonflight, because Dragonflight was 2022.
Yeah, Shadowlands came out in 2020. So that was like a year after Shadowlands came out.
I said so, and think about that. For almost 18 years, the devs were resistant against reading Chromie as trans. I want all the listeners to keep that in your mind. 18 years. 18 years. They weren't thinking about it in classic WoW, but as soon as they realized people who were queer were playing the game, or people who were queer were connecting with the characters, then the back occurred. And, well, we'll talk about that too. But anyway, still should we start? So our conclusion is it's good that they have tried. That's the thing. It's good that they have done what representation that they have. However, we're going to now touch on the less savoury parts of this and the troublesome, more problematic parts, I think. And I think that's the meat of our conversation here, is how can these sort of depictions be improved? How can we understand how the devs have included this in game and why the negative aspects to said depiction and the things that they're lacking in regards to that. So I think we'll start off. Like you said, we have our list of heterosexuals. We have the heterosexual list. This is the thing. If we look at the plot of WoW and things that the devs have said homophobia does not exist in World of Warcraft. I beg to differ. It's a beautiful thought. It's a beautiful thought, being that there is no homophobia in Azeroth. However, you immediately point out the existence of bloodline monarchy. And I brought this up, and I'm going to explain why bloodline monarchy is inherently homophobic, is that it relies on the idea that blood legacy in this case, is the be all and end all of the continuation of your existence. You must have a child. Said child must be a blood, right? So no adoptive children. And that is the primary goal of said monarchy. Monarchy is, we could talk for hours about why monarchy exists, but one of the prime factors was they needed to create a genetic bloodline at the existence of rulership over a section of land. And that itself doesn't account for the fact that if you have a queer child who is not going to have a child, they are immediately considered unworthy because they're not doing the successive line of genetic inheritance here. And that's the thing. Bloodline monarchies, because they need this to exist, are inherently homophobic. That's the thing. They're also inherently misogynistic too. That's the other, because if you're, let's just say, you're a person who can have a child, right? And you're unable to, either whether it's injury or just biology, etc., your reproductive aren't fit for it, or you could get severely ill, you are unworthy of this. The bloodline monarchy is like a perfect stand-all example of the human race's obsession with heterosexual reproduction and the importance and the utmost, almost, what's the traditional word for it?
Divine right of kings.
Yes, via said reproduction. Historically, I love monarchies because it's so fucked up, but technically, dare I say, an evil principle. Right? Just that someone is more worthy.
Someone has been appointed the most specialist person by divine power.
The specialist boy.
Right, the specialist boy.
My father said I'd been a particularly good boy and therefore deserved the sweet he is today.
And all of their children inherit this specialness, and only their children by blood can inherit the specialness.
We could have a laugh about the way of trans members of said families, but they're not including anyone. You can tell you need to be heterosexual, you need to be cis, and you need to be able to produce a heir. Looking back at classical legends and fantasy stories, of course they have that, because the idea of really breaking down what's bad is a very modern idea, because monarchies still exist for some fucking reason. And like I said, back in the olden days, to make sure that a certain area of land would always be in control of a certain group of people, right? But the thing is, these days, it's an incredibly dated principle. And WoW tries to show itself as a fantasy that is changing and improving, but still pays full credence to the idea of monarchy. And it creates some interesting stories, that's for sure. We've had Blizzard, the evil king or queen being throned, or essentially. But the thing is that when they try to put it in a good light, it still makes me have room for pause, because I'm like, this is a fantasy game that tries to show itself as, no, we're progressive within our sort of ideas here and showing all different things.
There was a forum post, which I will also dig up and do my research on. I don't know why I don't have it in this document, but they came out and said there's no homophobia on Azeroth. That doesn't exist. That's not a thing. There's no transphobia.
Well, we know who said that.
Who said it?
Well, since he isn't with the company anymore, it was Steve Deneuve. Steve Deneuve said that with his whole chest. Yes.
Hey everyone. So there's kind of a game of telephone going on here. What Ash and I are referring to is a response that Steve Deneuve gave during an interview with Wowhead in 2020 to a question about LGBTQ representation in the Shadowlands expansion. Deneuve's response was interpreted by many people in the community to be confirmation that there's no such thing as homophobia or transphobia in Azeroth. There were posts on the forums about it. There was a Twitter post that went viral that stated this explicitly. So I think that's where the confusion is coming from on our part here. For clarity's sake, I'm going to read the question and Deneuve's response in full. We talk about this response a couple of times in the video, so this might not be the only time you hear parts of this. So apologies for the repetition, but I just thought it would be better to err on the side of clarity. Okay, so the prompt from the interviewer is as follows. Pelagos is a character that we encounter in Bastion. Previously, he used they and them pronouns, but in a recent update, this has been changed. It was explained that while he presented as a woman in his mortal life, he chose to be a man in the Shadowlands, and that the change from they-them pronouns to he-him pronouns is a result of listening to feedback. There's also a few other things that we've seen. There's Matthias/Flynn, and a few other inclusions of LGBTQ+ storylines and characters. The first Night Warrior as well, and I just wanted to ask you about this direction in Shadowlands. And Steve Deneuve's response is as follows. Well, I think that one of the things that we've done in Shadowlands in a lot of different ways is try to really show that Azeroth as a whole represents the inclusiveness of the real world, the diversity of the real world. We've spent a lot of time creating the character customization options that you've seen go into the game and, you know, humans in particular. It's really awesome now that players will be able to create characters that more represent themselves, or the diversity of the world, and we'll see that woven into the populations of places. And part of that also includes the representation for other perspectives on gender or sexuality. And while Warcraft is not a game that's about those things, it's a heroic adventure. We want players to be able to see themselves reflected in these characters and a lot of different perspectives. And maybe it's an opportunity to see the world through someone else's eyes rather than just your own. Pelagos is a great example of a character that we think people will like, regardless of what you know about his background. He's hardworking, he's determined, he's lovable. He tries really hard to do the right thing, and those are noble qualities no matter how you identify or how you look at the world. But it is also an opportunity to tell a really cool story about him, and we'll be delving into that more through the patches and things like that through our content updates. I think it's a valuable thing that we show these different perspectives on Azeroth and want to really make clear that, you know, there's people who sometimes say, well, Warcraft is this medieval fantasy game, and those kinds of things weren't talked about in medieval times, so they shouldn't be in Azeroth, but I disagree with that. I think that Azeroth is a world of magic and a world of possibilities, and one of the things that's really important to know is that in Azeroth, you can love who you want, you can identify yourself the way that you want, and all of those things are possibilities. We just want the game to be able to reflect that through its storylines and through its character customization options, and we're really excited about that. So that last paragraph in particular, where he talks about how in Azeroth you can love who you want, you can identify the way that you want, all of these things are possibilities, that was specifically what many players interpreted as Deneuve confirming or saying that there's no homophobia or transphobia in Azeroth. That's where that comes from. Okay, so that is like what they're aspiring towards, but you still have this like problematic question that's come up with Anduin recently, who's currently the face of the game, the face of the Alliance.
He's transient at the moment. He isn't technically king at the moment.
He's currently Schrodinger's king. He may or may not go back to being king. We have to kind of wait and see what happens to him after this.
We'll be knowing in patch 11.27. We'll know whether Schrodinger's king. I mean, it's already implied in Bayron's short story. But I am waiting here for Anduin's turn Stormwind.
The big thing that happened semi-recently was in Before the Storm, which was the novel that came before Battle for Azeroth. It was brought up that Anduin needs to produce an heir so that the kingdom can have the next in the line of succession, to have that be secured. And again, Greymane was basically putting pressure on him, saying like, oh, have you, started dating? Thought about dating? My daughter is available. And Anduin was like, well, I don't know. I don't think your daughter would be very happy about that, blah, blah, blah. He was kind of dragging his feet about it, but it kind of like put this idea out into the community that Anduin needs to have a child. He needs to have a blood heir so that the Rin line of succession can continue. And that kind of like runs contrary, like you were saying, to this idea of there being no homophobia in Azeroth. It's like, well, if there's no homophobia, then why isn't there like another way to ensure the line of succession? Why does Anduin need to have a child?
A blood heir.
Why does there need to be a nuclear family for the line of succession to continue? Why isn't there like another contingency plan for this?
Solving this is an adoptive child. Like, that's the most simple way you could go around this. But it isn't, though. It's specifically a blood heir. And this runs full contrary to the idea that there is no phobia, transphobia in Azeroth. There is homophobia and transphobia in Azeroth because it's baked into the social constructs of how these different city-states work. Like, there's no homophobia in Azeroth. Thumbs up and then call it a day.
Right. Well, it's admirable that that was the stance they took. I think that was probably the smart choice given the community, how people tend to be with taking advantage of things like that, are kind of like using it as like an opportunity to let their bigotry, run wild. I don't think they've yet baked that completely into their world building. You still have problems like that, like, oh, did we think about monarchies and like succession? Like, that didn't factor into that bit of world building. That was clearly something that was just kind of like assumed from like certain real world traditions, which are homophobic.
Exactly. Theory and application. Like, you can say, I'm thinking of that Twitter post where it was a girl saying women love hard, and she was like, that's enough feminism for today. It really does read like that. It's like, no phobia. Okay, that's representation for today. Your representation, if you say that, you need to follow through, or else it means nothing. It has a small buffer against the more wildly homophobic parts of your community. But I think this would be a good time to point out all the heterosexual WoW. There is no homophobia in WoW. Sil, would you like to start?
In preparation for this, I kind of tried to make a list of like all of the main quote unquote temple characters.
And not only that, but their relationships have impact on the major story, or at least are brought up in, supplementary materials, did that quite consistently. But we tried to, like you said, you tried to make it these are the main characters, not even counting minor characters. These are kind of like, these characters, they have been in cutscenes, most of them, and they are engaged in heterosexual relationships.
I gave myself a little challenge. I told myself, oh, what if I only used characters that could be found as a BattleNet launcher icon? For people who don't know, to launch a Blizzard game, you usually use BattleNet, which is like this application, and you have to create an account, and you can have an icon with your account. They have characters from all of their games, like Overwatch and stuff like that. And they have characters from World of Warcraft. And I was like, I bet if I just go through the characters from World of Warcraft that have BattleNet launcher icons, I bet I could come up with a pretty long list of like main characters who are in heterosexual relationships. And I was definitely right. So
and sending our mind back again one last time, the minor, I'm not even calling them major. I'd actually only even lightly consider Shaw a more major. I wouldn't consider him a major character, but a more major character. We have literally 5 characters. 5. We have, actually I'd say 4 because I was counting Pelagos then, but Pelagos is trapped in hell. So, I mean, the Shadowlands, forget what I said, it isn't hell. It isn't hell. We have Flynn, Shaw, Chromie, Stellagosa, and Valtois. I just want people to remember that. 5 characters. 5 characters. And 4 of those are in relationships with each other. Now, please start on your list of heterosexual.
Okay, this is my list of like heterosexual characters who have not been confirmed by or anything like that. So going just on BattleNet launcher icons, we have Thrall. Thrall is married to, or his life mate is Agra.
What are you saying, Goen? What is in your heart?
I stand before you, Goel, son of Durotan, son of Garad. And if you would have me, I would be your life mate. For so long as I live, I will stand at your side, as you have stood at mine.
I stand before you, Agralan, daughter of Rial, daughter of Sarak. And I will proudly be your mate, Goen. In this world, or any other.
Thrall is such a linchpin of the Warcraft series that it feels very silly trying to explain who he is, but he is a character who goes back all the way to Warcraft's RTS days. He played a big role in shaping the new Horde and served for a long time as its war chief. He recently stepped back into the spotlight again as a leader and kind of the face of the Horde. His relationship to Agra goes all the way back to Cataclysm, and then Thrall and Agra also have children together. Thrall's parents, Durotan and Draka, were also a heterosexual couple. Durotan and Draka were protagonists on the Horde side of the 2016 Warcraft movie, of which their relationship and pregnancy are a key subplot.
I thought of a name.
Well, keep it to yourself, wife. I'll choose a name when I meet him. Or her.
Oh? And how will the great Durotan name his son? If I do not travel with him?
A son? Or can you hide your fat belly?
Better than you can hide your fat head.
Next couple, we have Malfurion and Tyrande, also main characters. Like Thrall, Malfurion and Tyrande go all the way back to the Warcraft RTS games, and their relationship has served as the emotional core of many stories over the years, both in-game and in novels.
Tyrande!
I knew you would not forsake me.
I thought I'd lost you forever, my love. If not for Illidan's aid, I may well have.
Malfurion! Where is my beloved? Where are you, Malfurion? Answer me!
My love! I am here! Where are you, Tyrande? I need you!
Hold on, my love! I am near.
You cannot keep me from her! Tyrande!
Yes, I hear you! I am close now! Xavius is using Malfurion to bait me, to distract me from what must be done. Ah, Malfurion, my beloved. For 100 years he slept beneath Moonglade. Whenever I was plagued with doubt, I would descend into his barrow. I watched over him as he slept. Even in slumber, his presence calmed me. I left my fears below the earth and emerged, ready to lead my people. When Malfurion returned to my side, we worked as one, as if he had never been away. Have you ever loved as I have? Now Xavius has me by the throat. I must abandon my beloved and subdue the most beautiful creature I have ever known. I am so tired, Malfurion. Do not ask this of me. After everything we have endured.
My love, you have always been the strength of our people. They will follow you ever onward, and you will never be alone.
Until I see you again, I will dream of the night we may truly rest together.
They do have an adopted daughter, so that is kind of like a slightly different family unit there. You have Illidan Stormrage, another main character who had unreciprocated feelings for Tyrande.
Tyrande, it is your voice. After all these ages spent in darkness, your voice is like the pure light of the moon upon my mind. Because I once cared for you, Tyrande, I will hunt down the demons.
You risked your life for me. I don't understand.
Whatever I may be, whatever I may become in this world, know that I will always look out for you, Tyrande.
At those times when I faced doubt, I held true to one constant, one anchor. You have always embodied the best of Azeroth, Tyrande. Your faith, your devotion. Through the darkest times, my belief in you never wavered. I leave Azeroth's defense to you and to my brother. Take care of him, Tyrande. Though at times I wished your heart had made a different choice, in the end, I know it made the right one.
And then we have Lorthamar and Thalyrisra. So these two characters are also faction leaders. Lorthamar is the Regent Lord of Quel'Thalas and also the leader of the Blood Elves. Thalyrisra is the current leader of the Nightborn. Their romance and devotion to one another have been affirmed very clearly, both in and out of game.
Your proposal? I am quite certain it was I who begged for your hand in marriage, Thalyrisra.
Lorthamar Theron, you are such a creature of duty that you would have delayed our wedding over a crooked painting in Silvermoon. How fortunate I am that both our kingdoms witnessed our vows, else you might try to deny that we ever exchanged them.
Deny the happiest moments of my life? Never. Whether under the light of the sun or the rays of the moon, I will love you for all my days, Thalyrisra.
As I will love you.
Lorthamar was recently the face of the announcement trailer for the upcoming expansion Midnight.
Soon, I will break your world.
You can't even break one elf.
They've also been featured in a book about their honeymoon, exploring Azeroth Isles and Islands. And they've also had two major short stories about their relationships. One was about their courtship, and the other was about their wedding. Next up, we have Varian Wrynn and Tiffin. Varian is another important character in Warcraft lore. He was King of Stormwind and High King of the Alliance for a number of years. He was basically the face of the Alliance when he was alive, just like Thrall continues to be the face of the Horde. But even after Varian's death, his presence still weighs heavily on other characters.
I know firsthand the pain of loss. My father, King Varian Wrynn, gave his life to save his people.
A giant memorial was also built for him in Stormwind so that later Alliance players who didn't know him in-game can still see that he was an important hero. Tiffin is unfortunately one of those female characters whose death made more of an impact on the plot than her actual character. We don't really know much about her aside from rose-tinted platitudes about how beautiful and kind she was. Her absence has been a pain point for both Varian and their son Anduin over the years, particularly in the short story Blood of Our Fathers. Anduin is currently in possession of her engagement and wedding rings, which he will presumably pass on to his future betrothed. Tiffin also has a memorial in-game, but hers is much smaller than Varian's. Varian's parents were also heterosexual, that's Taria and Lane Wrynn, and then Varian Tiffin also famously had a son, Anduin, who is now a main character, and Anduin himself has only been described as showing attraction to women in canon, to various degrees of certainty. Next we have Arthas, who...
Hold on, so the wiki devs hate her. Find out this one easy trick for making straight men impossible mad. So
saying that Anduin likes men as well as women, yes.
The mere implication of the fuming. Okay, next point, so don't distract us.
Next, we have Arthas, who is the titular Lich King, who is like the focus of Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, and also Wrath of the Lich King. He was in a relationship with Jaina Proudmoore, who is another major character.
It looks like you haven't lost your touch. It's good to see you again, Jaina.
You too, Arthas. It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere.
Yes, it has.
Tell me how, Uther. How do I destroy my prince?
Snap out of it, girl. You must destroy the Lich King at the place where he merged with Ner'zhul.
Forgive me, heroes. I should have listened to Uther. I had to see for myself. To look into his eyes one last time. He kept it. All this time, he kept it. I knew. I sensed a part of him still alive, trapped, struggling. Oh, Arthas. Perhaps he might someday remember what he once was. By the light, may he at last find rest.
Jaina?
I'm sorry, Arthas. I can't watch you do this. I should have stopped him. He never would have turned. He'd still be alive. I loved him, you know.
As did I. Take that love with you, Jaina. Let it lend you strength in dark times.
Jaina Proudmoore was also in a relationship with Pelagos.
Jaina!
Calic! I'm sorry I haven't reached out sooner.
Not to worry. You've been more than a little busy. I think we both needed to make a journey, just not together.
And that's all right.
It is.
There is Moira and Dagran Thurisian. They were another major couple. Their relationship featured heavily in Cataclysm. Basically, there was like some contention over Moira's decision to marry Dagran. She was assumed to have been kidnapped. It was like this whole thing. Dagran Thurisian was killed, and it was a big point of political contention. It was also something that came up recently in The War Within, their relationship, and Magni Bronzebeard's acceptance of it.
And we also got the raid.
And the raid, yes.
I wanted Dagran to be an emperor, not a servant. I wanted to rule together. But I know how this story ends, champion. And I can't bear to watch it.
Moira fights at the Emperor's side in both versions. But in the past, there was a bit of a debate whether or not he had ensorcelled her. Not hard to imagine, considering that they put her in a Princess Leia outfit. In the new version, she's dressed more in dark iron garbs, more in line with the story that we have these days, which is that Moira actually fell in love with Dagran. Growing up, her father Magni had never shown her respect, simply because she was born a woman. Her time at the Dark Islands was the complete opposite. And these so-called heroes, they came in and they took out not only the leader of the Dark Islands, not only her husband, but also the father of her unborn child.
Spare my son.
No! Thorson was a great and honorable dwarf! You ruined my life! And the life of my unborn child!
At first, the Dark Irons were just tools for my own ambition. And then I was blinded by love. And my wee Dagran, my son, a symbol of our unity, and the legacy my husband never got to see. Dagran Thorison II, named after his father. I didn't want folks forgetting where he came from, the bad, the good, everything. I just wish Dagran was here to see it. The Dark Iron's free, the leader our son is becoming. I'm sure he would be proud.
But again, the focus is sexual relationship and the impact of those two characters working out like very difficult things in regards to that. It's complex, it's messy. Moira had her reasons and she's allowed to be messy. That's the thing too.
The Dark Irons felt cursed, that violence was the only choice. I thought I could change them. Change him. I won't defend the things the Dark Irons did. What I did. The blood on our hands. I was blinded by my hatred for my father, blinded by my pride.
Moira's parents, Magni Bronzebeard and Aemar, were also heterosexual. Next up, we have Alleria and Tyrallion. Since they came back during Legion, Alleria has been like a key character this expansion and the War Within, and her relationship to Tyrallion has also played a major factor in events in the game.
I should have been there for you.
You were. More than you could ever know.
We stood together for 1,000 years. I'll stand by you for 1,000 more.
And the next time I push you away?
I wait. Until you ask me to come back.
And it's a good thing I always do.
I've missed you, Alleria. And I'm not going anywhere.
I know. We stand together, Tyrallion. Here and now.
I'm coming with you.
I know you would. But your place is here. I need you to trust me.
Come back to me.
I always do.
And they also have a son, Erator.
Who is also going to be a main character.
Erator, who is also going to be a main character next expansion. They've had a short story, at least one short story about their relationship. They've been featured in books. Their family is like, oh, they get portraits. So like a reward for like pre-purchasing some edition of the next expansion is you get portraits of each of the family members that you can hang in your house for when Housing gets released in this game.
And Xalatath.
And Xalatath, yeah.
Just pointing that out too, because I feel like that's a relationship that I think we should really focus on too here. Alleria and Tyrallion, like Tyrallion's trust in Alleria. The upcoming book is their complicated relationship. These characters, again, are allowed to be in messy hetero relationships, but still show their overwhelming love for each other and real sexuality, you know, with each other. These are men and women in relationships, and we can accept those. And this is the thing, people jokingly saying Alleria and Xalatath, you know, as like the toxic Yuri, which is...
They don't flirt. It's not flirting.
It's not real it's fun sort of bantering game, but actually trying to say that any sort of seed of truthfulness in any sort of romantic, even, you know, messed up romantic attraction between the both is, again, it's treated like a joke.
Right, they don't get into the game like the repercussions, like Alleria feeling guilt over cheating on Tyrallion, you know, by having these feelings for this sentient, voidy creature who came out of a knife.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Summer Hikaru died going on here. But let's just say this, like, it's good in good fun with a lot of queer players, right? And it may even be in good with the devs, but it doesn't hold a grain of truth. Can't ascribe any sort of queer attraction for these, because, and I even saw this, people immediately getting defensive and saying, well, Alleria is married. It will be immediately shut down by the validity of a heterosexual relationship. Queer relationships are not valid. Heterosexual relationships are valid. You know, that's the sort of trend we often see. Okay. Keep going, Sil.
Okay, so you have Bane, who is the leader of the Tauren. He has a relationship with Myla Highmountain, who is a female High Mountain Tauren.
Be patient. Your friend will return when his feet guide him back to those who love him.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Mela. And for your kindness.
Always, Bane.
Mela has the most perfect antlers. Yeah, not that I'm thinking about them or anything. Do not speak about her antlers.
There is Deathwing, who was the main villain of the Cataclysm expansion. He had many female consorts, willing and unwilling, unfortunately. And then he almost married Arthas' sister, Kalia Menethil, when he was disguised as a human named Deval Prestor, and that was a big plot point. Next up, we have Sylvanas, who was the leader of the Forsaken. She was like a major villain in BFA and Shadowlands. She had a relationship with Nathanos, and they still kind of had feelings for each other into Undeath.
Safe journey, Nathanos.
Safe journey, my love.
next one, so Velen has a quote-unquote presumed wife because we never learn her name, but he has a son, and that's a big plot point in Legion.
In the time that is now just the whisper of a memory, I had a son. On the day of his birth, a vision came to me. In that vision, I saw myself weeping as I held the dying Eredar in my arms. But I buried that vision after Kil'jaeden took my family from me, and for eons let it be lost in the darkest recesses of my being. Now, finally, as I hold you in my arms, I understand.
There's that nuclear family. Next up, we have Gen, who was the leader of the Worgen. That's now Tess Greymane, who is the daughter of Gen and Mia Greymane. So that's another nuclear family with the heterosexual parents.
It's impossible to reason with that girl.
Remind you of anyone, dear? She did not inherit her temper from me. But she's not wrong. Liam was the heir apparent. He was meant to lead Gilneas.
Not a day goes by without me thanking the light that the two of you were spared the curse. It is not the answer she seeks.
Perhaps not. But that is a lesson she must learn herself. Let her talk to the druid. We'll see how that goes.
And if it goes badly?
Then we'll have another one of these pleasant family conversations.
There's the dragon Alexstrasza. She has multiple male consorts. Alexstrasza has been featured in multiple expansions, and she is the queen of the dragons.
Do you think I have big mom energy?
There's also Nosdormu, who is the leader of the Bronze Dragonflight. He has a wife, Sora Dormi. There is Ysera. I just started listing dragons because we just had a dragon expansion, and dragons have been featured heavily in like multiple expansions. So there's Ysera. She has, or had, I don't know if he's deceased or not. I think he might be Iranicus.
He is. He's in that dungeon that was a classic dungeon. Temple in the Wetlands, you go down and you fight Hakar-esque snake skeletons, and he's the last boss in there.
They had a number of children, including Marithra, who is a main character in the Dragonflight expansion, and possibly more. I don't remember.
Being dragons, they probably have a lot of kids, yeah.
Yeah, they do have a lot of kids. They tend to have a lot of kids.
But gay relationships are,
lacking on that front. Another dragon couple is Pelagos, who is also leader of the Blue Dragonflight, his mate Sindragosa. He also had other female consorts, willing and unwilling. There's unfortunately a lot of rape involved in the dragon storylines, but their relationship was like a major plot point in Dragonflight, particularly on the Blue Dragonflight side.
Pelagos? Is it truly you?
My treasure. What happened?
It seems they are in good hands. Together. Always.
And then this is reaching a little bit, but I wanted to mention this because Pelagos is such a darling of the dev team. An unreciprocated relationship is heavily implied between Pelagos, the new leader of the Blue Dragonflight, who was formerly in a relationship with Jaina Proudmoore. There's a relationship between Pelagos and Kirigosa in Dragonflight, which I think was like another fanship that kind of wandered into the game. There's like a quest line that you go on between them, and they're kind of flirting with each other and having like a great time together.
It's beautiful.
Better than frost and snow. Keep up, Pelagos. Let the warm winds take you. That boy still has it, doesn't he?
It's very heavily implied that they kind of had a thing, but Kirigosa isn't interested in a relationship right now.
Pelagos, your return stirs my heart and my memories. I've remade my family here. If I had a choice, I would never leave them.
Kiri, I apologize. You do have a choice. I'm happy for Kiri. She deserves this and so much more. She spent her entire life dedicated to the Blue Dragonflight, even after loss. After loss. After Events I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Nothing more can be taken from her.
That was just something special I put in for me because I was rolling my eyes throughout the entire thing because I was just very fed up with how well Pelagos was being treated in Dragonflight compared to other characters that I like.
What are you looking at me for?
Pelagos, the dev's favorite white boy of the expansion. They always have to have a favorite white boy.
My dear Pelagos.
Let me just say, he also fucked the Sunwell as a woman. He couldn't have the Sunwell as a man. No, the Sunwell had to be a woman, a sexy woman. And you're also forgetting one in here too, Sel. Going back to Jaina's other, like, I'd say slightly...
Oh, right. Kael'thas, right? Kael'thas, yeah. Was it unreciprocated or were they actually in a relationship?
It was kind of unreciprocated. He really liked Jaina, but I think Jaina was a bit cool on it. You know what I mean?
Are you still upset that I stole Jaina from you, Kael? You've taken everything I've ever cared for, Arthas. Vengeance is all I have left.
Everyone wants Jaina. Sex bomb Jaina.
The point is that Jaina Proudmoore, major character, has had like multiple relationships so many boyfriends that have been very important to the plot.
So you think you know what it's like to date a bad boy? Girlfriend? You have no idea.
Hey everyone. So there were actually a few more notable characters with BattleNet icons who were or are in heterosexual relationships that I missed during my talk with Ash, and I just wanted to touch on them briefly now. So next up we have Cairn Bloodhoof. He is Bane's father.
I am Bane, son of Cairn,
and the former leader of the Tauren before Bane took that mantle, and his life mate was a female Tauren named Tamala. Next, we have Garrosh's father, Grommash Hellscream. He was the chieftain of the Warsong clan who was involved in the events of Warcraft 2 and 3, and also appeared in a few books such as Lord of the Clans. His life mate was a female orc named Golka, and I actually discovered that there were a series of videos put out by Blizzard to kind of advertise the upcoming expansion Warlords of Draenor. Each one featured a different orc, and Grommash was featured in one of the videos, and there's actually a scene with his life mate Golka where she's heavily injured after a battle and she's begging him to kill her so that she can have a quote-unquote honorable warrior's death. He basically refuses and calls her weak for wanting to die, then abandons her. It was a pretty significant part of that video, which was meant to be a highlight reel of events that encapsulate who Grommash Hellscream is as a character.
Among the victims of their retribution was Grommash's mate, Golka.
I am done. Give me the warrior's death I deserve.
No, you will not be broken. A true war song spits in the face of death.
Don't you see? It's too late. End it.
So many of my warriors bent like reeds. And now you are a wolf with no teeth. All of you.
Next up, so this one is kind of a stretch, Talanji. So we last saw Talanji during the short story, The Eternal Vow, which was about Lorthamar and Thylisra's wedding, which she attended with a male troll named Zakan as her +1. So your +1 is usually a significant other or a very close friend. So I'm going to chalk that up to a hint at a relationship between the two of them. They also spent a lot of time together in Shadows Rising. Zakan saved Talanji's life in one scene, that kind of thing. So last up, we have Bolvar Fortdragon. He played a pretty significant role in Wrath of the Lich King, wherein he became the Lich King after Arthas's death because, quote unquote, there must always be a Lich King. He had an unnamed wife, and together they had a daughter, Talia Fortdragon, who also played a significant role in the questing experience of Battle for Azeroth on the Alliance side. Talia was also featured in the Shadowlands expansion, wherein she journeyed to the Shadowlands with the player characters to reunite with her father, to reunite with Bolvar. Bolvar also played a significant role in Shadowlands as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that I forgot when I was talking about Varian that Onyxia was kind of trying to seduce him when his soul was split and his more passive self was serving as King of Stormwind. So she was basically trying to manipulate Stormwind, the human kingdom, through him by taking the guise of a female noblewoman named Katrana Prestor. So that was another heterosexual relationship that kind of played a significant role in the plot of, it was either at the very, very start of World of Warcraft or predating World of Warcraft. The story was featured in some comics. This story also made an appearance during the Human Heritage questline. Okay, one last final note. Going back to Jaina Proudmoore, her parents, Catherine and Dalen, were also a heterosexual couple, and Jaina's relationship to them as a daughter played a significant role in the plot of Battle for Azeroth, as well as Warcraft 3.
Father, why wouldn't you listen?
Above all else, Jaina, he was a proud warrior. Remember him as such.
Time to go, Jaina.
I love you, Papa.
Come topside, sweetheart.
Your loving mother will never forgive you, murderer.
Do you accept the judgment of your homeland?
I accept your judgment, Mother. My daughter, forgive me.
Those were all of the relationships that I was able to get just from going off of characters who have BattleNet icons. What I wanted to also emphasize here is that these are all prominent characters in the World of Warcraft story. That's why they have BattleNet icons. They are iconic. Players recognize them. They were invested in their stories. A lot of these characters are faction leaders, so they're kind of like the leader of whatever race that you choose to play as in the game. You form emotional ties to them. You get emotionally involved in their stories, which also include stories about their relationships. These create heartfelt moments or tense moments, or they up the stakes or the drama in some way. So I don't think it's accurate to say that romance doesn't play a part in Warcraft's story. Romance is a genre that's just as much a part of Warcraft as fantasy or sci-fi. Romance is woven into Warcraft's story. So when someone tries to say, like Steve Denuser did during the Wowhead interview, that Warcraft is not a game about gender and sexuality, I don't think that's really accurate. Gender and sexuality do play a role in World of Warcraft. It's just cisnormative gender and heterosexuality, which are two concepts that are so baked into our society that we barely perceive them when they do show up. I think that's just something to keep in mind, is that sexuality has kind of always been folded into Warcraft's lore. So the reason why I wanted to list all of these out is that there was a quote by executive producer John Haidt that he gave, I believe, in an interview on July 2020, where he said, "WoW is a game that doesn't try to emphasize sexual relationships. So in that regard, we don't necessarily tell that part of the story other than to hint around it." This was in response to a question about like if there would be queer characters in the game or not. And I have to say, I think most people would say,
no,
that is not true. WoW is a game that does emphasize sexual relationships. It just emphasizes heterosexual relationships, which are
the norm,
taken to be the norm.
The norm.
And it just doesn't stand out to people because they're so commonplace.
Yeah, it really is.
They're the default in society.
And I'm gonna have a guess, and apologies, John, if this is incorrect. I'm guessing John Haidt is straight as well. So to him, these are all normal things. It's like the joke meme of Ed from bloody Full Metal Alchemist. He's like, yaoi couple, Yuri couple, normal couple. They're all the same. Love is love.
He goes on to say, "We don't try to put a big focus on it and make it a big deal. We just try to make the game feel comfortable, friendly, and approachable for everybody in the game. regardless of where they come from, which
I
is,
disagree.
I think, admirable to aspire to,
It's
but
admirable.
in practice,
I disagree.
In practice, doesn't always shake out.
I do not agree even slightly with that. Like, I mean, that's a lovely thing, but like I always say, I don't have much respect for people who talk the talk, can't walk the walk, is what I always say. I think actions speak much louder than words. You can talk all day long, but unless you actually do something about it or make efforts, like actual noticeable efforts to change that, I don't think words mean fuck all. Is my polite. I'm not going to get too heated during this. I think that's very rich coming from someone in that position in this game. So all I've got to say is that it may be nice and comfortable for you straight coming into this and never wants to really think about queer couples or queer relationship. Unfortunately, for some of us, this is our life. It's a nice sentiment, but I think it rings hollow. So especially after you just talking about all those characters just then, so like you said, those were just battle characters.
A lot of those characters were characters who have kind of featured heavily in the story. Faction leaders, they're characters that people know that get like merch made out of them. They feature very prominently in the plot, and their relationships also often feature prominently in the plot. Like there's a moment in game where the character player is present for Thrall and Agra reciting their marriage vows to each other in the game. There's like a whole quest line about that.
I would be your life mate. For so long as I live, I will stand at your side, as you have stood at mine.
So it's like very clear, very open, these like heterosexual relationships that are in the game. It is part of the game. It's like a major part of the game, even if it just seems like background noise. If you're someone who just like doesn't notice. To someone who's straight, they wouldn't necessarily. It's like a fish doesn't notice water, when you're swimming in it, that kind of thing.
So after looking now at like all those characters, like clearly in heterosexual relationships, engaging very heterosexually within Azeroth, you know what I mean? So we'll just have a quick note in regards to the little bit of change I've noticed between Shadowlands, Dragonflight, and War Within. Now, we will give a little bit of credit to the devs in regards to Shadowlands and Dragonflight. They do get over the bar, is what I have to say, with minor background characters. We certainly see out in the world lots of queer characters who are just existing, which is nice. That's the thing, like in openly, again, air quotes, openly queer relationships. So there's no being able to misconstrue their relationship, either that they say that they are trans or they are two characters of the same gender in a relationship together. They do exist, and that's the thing. Like there was a few Kyrians, there was a lesbian couple with the Kyrians. In Dragonflight there was a whole bunch of like small minor characters, especially noting the two men who make a reappearance at the Valentine's event every year now too. It was nice. It was just a little bit more flavor out in the world.
Yeah, I think the Love is in the Air rework was like particularly well done. Like they really made an effort to kind of show like same-sex couples and kind of like celebrate different types of love, not just like queer love, but self-love and stuff like that. So it was a really nice update.
It was a nice update. Like I said, but no hate from us on these sorts of things either. Now, the first mysterious thing that I want to discuss is the disappearing Pride event in Dragonflight. Now, people will be like, there was no Pride event. Now, we need to be honest and real that when they said on their roadmap for Dragonflight that there was a new event coming roughly end May, June, that it was likely going to be a Pride event in World of Warcraft. Now, we know that Overwatch already has its Pride event, but World of Warcraft has always been kind of like we said earlier, it's always been kind of lacking in its support for like openly queer events, basically. Now, that event I will bet my life on was the event of being yourself with Emberthal later in patch 10.2.7, I believe.
Yeah, her Visage Day. So like a little background, Visage Day was kind of Visage Day. I did this in the Dragonflight videos too. Oh my god. So Visage Day is this event that they created that's part of dragon culture, where a dragon basically comes up with a form that they will assume to kind of interact with mortals. So, and it'll be like a form that's entirely of their choosing. They say a spell and they take the form of like an elf or a gnome or a troll, whatever speaks to them. And sometimes they change their gender when they do this. So it was kind of WoW's attempt to kind of like fold some queer inclusive lore into dragon culture.
That was a very nice touch. But I do believe that it was supposed to be a full-on LGBTQ plus event in game. And I believe it most definitely got cannibalized, well, broken down into smaller pieces to be repurposed for different things. And not in a good way. I mean that I think its initial message was going to be much clearer in that event, and they walked it back with rapidity. And I know people will be like, well, you're just imagining things. No way. 100%. The timing was just too coincidental. And being in law, you know that when coincidences start stacking up together, there's something afoot. You'd have to be purposely being obtuse to not see that that was probably the dev's intentions. So again, but speaking of lawyers, it was legal reason. We can't do this. So points against that, may I just say. Once again, it reinforces that crumbs are okay, but nothing overly celebratory for anything queer.
Right. So that holiday, that mysterious holiday never manifested in game, but what did show up in game was this quest line where the player character goes with Emberthal, who is a Drakthir. Drakthers have visages just like regular dragons do, and there's a quest line where you walk her through, like, she doesn't know what she wants her visage to be, so you kind of like go out and you talk to other dragons and other mortals of Azeroth and kind of like talk to them about like how they like to present themselves to the world, and you bring that knowledge back to her, and then in the end she decides she doesn't need a visage, she is fine with the way that she looks, which is kind of like a beautiful message.
She's comfortable in her own scales.
Exactly, yeah, comfortable in her own scales.
Notably, during that quest too, we run into a lesbian couple with an adoptive child.
Yeah.
I believe between the Tauren woman and the Volpera woman, I think.
I think the child was a Volpera, but I think the other character was a different race. I don't think they were Volpera.
Was it a Pandaren?
I want to say...
They were furry. They were definitely furry.
Yes. They were lesbians, though.
They were lesbian furries. They were lesbian furries, which is a huge fucking thumbs up from me. Exactly. There was a lesbian couple during that, too. It was just too telling. And like I said, I feel like that is very sad that we lost that. And again, whatever themes and like that quest, it was just whittled down to just that singular quest in 11.2.7, which is, no, sorry, 10.2.7, which is very sad, I think. So again, that is a point against Blizz. Speaking of points against Blizzard, we'll just quickly note about, again, the kind of the history of issues that Blizzard has had with both the LGBTQ plus community and also its queer players. I'll start off with an elephant in the room as we go into midnight too, because I was here for this, Gandalf. I was very much here for this. We're talking about how stereotypes, and I don't mean silly stereotypes, I mean the bad sort of stereotypes here. It's not a quirk, it's something more sinister at work here. Back in Burning Crusade, with the release of Blood Elves, male Blood Elves were particularly called a lot of slurs, and the devs back in those days did, because it was back in the times of Burning Crusade, did nothing to alleviate the use of slurs, or even in forums, on what little social media we had back then. There was a stereotype of blood elf men being gay, and this was used derogatorily. It wasn't said in a fun manner by queer people. It was said by straight members of the community. And that sort of mindset has followed on with Blizzard in a sense that, I mean, we've certainly heard about the idea of needing to avoid queer stereotypes. No naming names here. Avoiding queer stereotypes, and straight men can be soft too. You know, that sort of mindset that either soft or feminine men need to be straight. because it would be an offensive stereotype to gay men. However, the devs are quite all right with people being completely offensive with calling male blood elves gay in the most heinous of manners back in the day. So, like I said, it certainly calls into question when this sort of logic is applied, basically. And the thing is that obviously the queer community holds issue with that because gay men can be feminine. They're allowed to be feminine, I'm going to say. They're 100% just as valid as your mask gay man. And the thing is that, like, actually saying and using that as an excuse, saying, well, we don't want to fall into stereotypes of saying that queer men are soft. It's just like that irony of when people say, well, we don't want to fall into like women being too butch and being lesbians. Because it's every lesbian to be mature mask. First of all, I would love to know where this absolute heaven of butch women is hiding in media. I would love to see it. I would love to see where all these
where are they?
Butch lesbian, where are they?
Where are all the butch lesbian stories?
How are these straight people and people who say there's too many butch lesbians in media, where are they hiding themselves? I would like to see this. I love butch lesbians. Show me where the butch lesbians are. And it's the same with feminine gay men. Where? Where are all these feminine gay men? I barely see gay men in media as is, I'm going to say.
One thing to note about Shaw and Flynn is that they are both traditionally masculine men. So the first...
They're quite mask.
Right. They are very masked. So neither of them... And older men. Again,
we're not poo-pooing Blizzard's efforts at all with having a gay couple in the game. Like I said, it's really nice. However, Blizzard's only gay rep now is to quite traditionally masked men. Like both Shaw and Flynn they're just very duty dudes, if you know what I mean. They're not like gentle healers, wink wink. They're not men, you know, with particularly like boyish looks to them. Could say a lot of things here. And using that as someone who is straight and using that excuse, it comes off as very disingenuous, dare I say. But yeah, to just conclude on that, essentially, it comes across as very disingenuous. WoW devs or just Blizzard as a whole saying that, like, oh, we don't want to go into stereotypes. The stereotypes in this case is, I think we discussed this before, you don't even have these characters to begin with, and you can't, it's a little rich that now. And now that you do have these characters in there, you can't use, stereotypes. And I'd say this, having feminine gay men isn't a stereotype.
Right. Some gay men are feminine.
Some gay are very masked.
Some lesbian women are butch. It's like, it just depends on like the depiction, you know, it's like, are you punching down on this depiction of like a feminine gay man or a butch lesbian? And you can like avoid that kind of stuff by actually having queer writers like on your writing team or having proofreaders who are queer, sensitivity readers. I think that's like the term.
And just being intelligent about stuff like that.
Right.
Like taking your time with it. I know time is a treasured resource within any sort of large company, but just using the old noggin when it comes to saying things about depiction and actually applications of depiction. Okay, next one too. Now, this is a more controversial issue, and we're not going to name names at all either. Speaking about Blizzard's history and talking about appeasement in regards to certain elements of that the company interacts with. And this leads me to content creators. Content creators. I'm using the term content creator with a certain element of sarcasm to it too. Throughout the history of time, Blizzard, I would argue from my perspective, this is a little bit of my perspective here, has had a bit of a soft touch towards content creators with very checkered past or just straight out and out bigots, inviting them to events such as Plunderstorm, having them at BlizzCon, and having them on BlizzCon on stage and calling part of your community a slur against gay men and just queer people in general. And I'm just talking about the corpse grinder incident in that case.
Turn your attention to the video screens and check something out for us.
I'm not playing, man. World of Warcraft is life for me. And I don't play no alliance either. I don't play no night elves or gnomes, orcs and undead. The alliance. Die, you Emo. I'm not fucking playing, man. World of Warcraft is fucking life for me. And I don't play no fucking Homo Alliance either. I don't play no fucking Night Elves or Gnomes. It's fucking Orcs and Undead. Fuck the Alliance. Fucking die, you fucking emo cocksuckers.
Also, being buddy, pally on social media with, let's just say, in the most nebulous of terms, e-girls who love, and it's more than just e-girls, people who love praising Blizzard sometimes turn around and say things like, gays need to go to mental institutes, or they need to be, current events need to be stoned, things like that. Actual people on social media who are in your community, and you will engage with them when they are praising your game, but you will overlook their indiscretion towards your community. That isn't a good look, is all I've got to say. I saw that quite often on Twitter. All the way up to Dragonflight, by the way. We included queer characters in our expansion, but we're still liking and engaging with people who are actively homophobic in the community. Remember when I said so, that actions speak louder than words? This is what I'm kind of talking about, and why I always have a sort of, we often joke, like, do we seem bitter? Do we seem like we have a chip on our shoulders? We have for good measure, I would argue. Anyway, this is the thing. Even to the lesser crimes of not pushing enough queer creators in your community, or at least moderating. I was about to say earlier too, like moderation on Blizzard's Twitter posts. I'm not calling it the new name. Twitter post only happened occasionally, and that was when the hate was getting. Hate is too less of a word. Repugnant statements said by people in the wider WoW community. Only when it got to extreme levels did they even moderate their posts, and I think that's very poor.
Part of me wonders if that's why they don't do like Pride posts for Pride Month or things like that, is because they know the comments that they're going to get
are going to be vile. Yes, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because they've cultivated a community that has been allowed to say these things on official posts. It's caused an environment where they can't talk about these things to support the people that the wider community are shouting down at, are saying vile, disgusting things to.
Go fucking cry in a river and tell me how you're gonna slit your wrist, you night elf faggot.
So they've fulfilled their own prophecy, as in this was cultivated, and it was cultivated via an environment where this sort of thing, it's the old NAZI bar thing comes into it. You let one of them in and let him invite his friends in, and then you were quickly an NAZI bar. So that is World of Warcraft's moderation, I think. And their social teams and their general community management have never been very good at rooting this stuff out. Because of all these years, it is just grown in its own little patches of weeds in the garden. But unfortunately, like I said, the devs themselves too still engage with these people. Like I said, you may think the e-girl selfies are cute, but when she's turning around and posting some homophobic or racist nonsense, you need to draw the line. Because World of Warcraft at certain times in its life, especially during Shadowlands, was desperate for validation in regards to the quality of its content, I think that they let those things slip once again. It engaged a lot of poor community members in a sense of like, these people shouldn't have been given credence, and engaged with a lot of content creators that should not have been given a platform.
From like what I've seen, I've always felt like the attitude has always been that if you're queer, if you're a person of color, if you're a minority in some way, the onus is on you to be the bigger person. You have to take it in stride. That's kind of the expectation that's put on you. And you can't let your anger show. You can't react poorly to what are, in a lot of cases, heinous things that are being said, or like attitudes that are being perpetuated. I don't think that's fair. Like with the moderation, it's like, well, you know, this is how the community is. You either take it or leave it. Like there's nothing we can do.
Boys will be boys, right?
Boys will be boys, yeah. Other people can be as like heinous, but you as a minority always have to have the outstanding attitude and like the composure, and you have to take it in stride, like I said.
Not get angry at the company.
Not get angry at the company, not get angry at the community, not get angry at all. Not point it out.
You just have to sit there and take it. You got to sit there and take it.
Because like, don't feed the trolls, you know, and that's kind of like the attitude that I think is like kind of pervasive in the WoW community. And if you do get angry, if you do lash out or speak out about it, people who would consider themselves progressive will kind of look down on you for letting your anger show or for having a human reaction to what are some very inhuman things being said. That's kind of like how I've like always felt the atmosphere has been like on social media, like on the forums or on Twitter or even on like Blue Sky.
I'd say it's common in gaming communities, but like I said, very pervasive in WoW because being an MMO, it's a very social game. I even think about, this is a little bit off topic, but even something that Gabe Newell said the other day that made me roll my eyes a little bit. He was like half joking because the international's coming up for Dota 2 and he's like, I love, you know, playing some Dota 2 and people be like, oh, you suck, you know, you suck and you're a shit player. And he's like, haha, you know, players will be players. I think that's a very weak standpoint to take. It's rich coming from Gabe Newell because he's a very rich man, you know, and to him, he doesn't have to play his games. And to him, these things have only a mild sort of impact on the general health of a game. For him, anyway. But for other people, it's very important that you create an environment that's at least moderated for your community. You have to work on that moderation. And I know big companies are getting more and more lax on it. Like, who needs moderation? But at least your social media.
I don't know what the solution is because, like, to some extent, that is kind of the best way to deal with trolls is to, like, not feed them. But it's very disheartening when you see people who would normally be supportive or who call themselves allies acting in a disapproving way when anger is justified. When you're under the stress in the moment of dealing with a very hateful person, it's like you're not always going to act perfectly, you know?
No, you need to be consistently cool-headed.
Yeah. The onus is, like, on you to constantly be cool-headed. There's no like understanding on like where that anger comes from, you know, or anything like that. It's always like you are the worst person for having a bad reaction to something that merits a bad reaction, which is very disheartening.
Yes. And I'm going to just say this as someone in law, that is ridiculous to me. People respond to different situations in very different ways. And I'm speaking about all different situations in life. As someone who does get mad, and I do get mad, and like some things can really tick me off. I think that people are allowed the reactions. Like, as long as like it's within reactions to things that personally overstep bounds. And I think that was the thing that with Blizzard, like linking it back to Blizzard, they have done a lot of things wrong in regards to their social media management, their community management over the years. Like a lot of things wrong.
The Alliance! Die, you emo...
And then expecting people to speak very cool-headedly about how we feel grievances about that is kind of ridiculous, you know? Especially when they're overtly allowing, like, in this sense, homophobic people, the worst of the worst, to join their little content creator battle royale. And you're like, I love how you invited that active bigot, you know? And like, obviously, like, these people even attack some of the devs that work at Blizzard, you know, like in major ways. But I can note that it's even more than just the ones who are like huge voices in that. It's the lower level ones. Content creators will let a lot of things slide under the guise of jokes, and homophobia gets passes and stuff like that. It's this low level and covert homophobia that's invasive too. And from the community and people that Blizzard uplifts into these positions of like being community, tied in with our community. You know, I'm a Blizzard content creator. It is kind of ridiculous, and it does need a little bit more looking at, is what I've got to say there. But I just want to let people know our anger is justified a lot of the times after seeing all the shit we've seen over the years. Like I said, that's a very personal thing, but again, I think people may know who I'm referring to with a lot of these situations and have seen this on social media. And yes, people will be people. Sometimes you won't know everything about a person.
What do you do in your years of just relax, or?
Yeah, you know, I'll spend time with my daughters, you know, wife and daughters, go to Disney, do some fishing, grilling, watching American football, you know, drinking.
but a certain level of professionalism online from devs and a certain level of higher, at least acknowledgement that the social media and moderation has led to some very bad communities sprouting up in WoW would be appreciated. We're not making up a bogeyman in regards to this thing. The call is coming from inside the house, World of Warcraft, in regards to homophobia and racism, things like sexism, etc. So anyway, now this leads to our next sort of like leaving off that for a little bit and getting back into the idea of queer characters in WoW. And this is again linked to the devs and Blizzard themselves engaging with this in game. Bringing up that list before that you went through, Sel. The lack of main queer characters, and this is more of a writing critique that we're just going to note here. And we want to like make it obvious to everyone listening to us talking here. There's a certain ways via writing techniques to minimize the effect of even showing representation if need be. I talked earlier about plausible deniability. That is, I'm going to say this. As good as Blizzard has been at trying to engage with like queer content in the game and queer characters, every single queer character that we mentioned before has plausible deniability as to their relationship or their gender. That is, like we said before, Flynn and Shaw in game, it took 2 years for them to even have a slightly, very loosely romantic, remember Sel, because Flynn goes to the trading post to pick up a pet for Shaw.
So Flynn is in Stormwind now. He basically does this like little loop where he like goes back and forth between the trading posts next to the stockades and SI7 headquarters, and basically he has like dialogue with the people at the trading post. He's like looking for a pet, and the pet is for Shaw, like a surprise gift for him. So he'll have some dialogue at the trading post being like, oh, I'm looking for this puppy, like I'm looking for that. And then he'll like go back to SI7 and he'll have like a little cute interaction with Shaw where I forget what they say exactly, but he's kind of like, Shaw already knows that Flynn has been to the trading post because Shaw knows everything. He's a spy master. So they have like a little banter where Flynn is like, hey, it was supposed to be a surprise, and Shaw is like, oh, I still appreciate it. So there's that.
Other than that interaction, the other interaction that Flynn and Shaw have had in game, and this is the thing, they both turned up in the War Within, but never interacted with each other. The other time that they've interacted was the 2024 anniversary event, which is a limited time event. It will likely be coming back this year, but whether Flynn and Shaw are still there interacting or not is yet to be seen. The other couple that was there in the, again, limited time event. So after this event was gone, it was gone. These interactions were out of the game. Were Stella Ghoster and Valtoire. Again, in a romantic dialogue. Now, theirs was actually notably, Stella Ghoster and Valtoire's interactions was more romantic than Flynn and Shaw's. Flynn and Shaw's was still very, I always want to argue that they write them in game very prickly to each other, and I'm not a huge fan of that. It's the whole shebang of like the couple who loves to quarrel at each other. It's fine. I personally think the best bit of media that's ever depicted that was probably X-Files. I'm a big Scully and Mulder fan because their banter is incredibly enjoyable. And they do get mad at each other, but you can tell that they have an ultimate trust in one another. I'm actually not a big fan of the couple who quibbles at each other trope, though.
Well, the thing is that X-Files has like how many seasons? So many episodes to kind of, because they're the main characters of the show, whereas Shaw and Flynn, again, they're not major characters, so they're not featured very heavily in the story. So there's like fewer opportunities. I think Flynn still has like a generic human model. He doesn't even have a unique model to him. He just is like, the player can create a character that looks exactly like Flynn. He's not like unique.
And even now, we have his jacket in game too, so we can make Flynn to the T.
Right, exactly. He uses like stock clothing coat. So the thing is that in order for them to kind of like build that rapport, they need to be kind of featured in the story more often. And when Flynn shows up in the War Within, he kind of like makes a comment about like, oh, I've lost these daggers, you know, Shaw gave them to me, you know, he's like, I have to get them back. So you have to kind of have that knowledge like, oh, his boyfriend gave him those daggers, that's why he wants to get them back, because they're special to him. In that way, you have to kind of like have that background information in order order to fully appreciate the little quest line. And it's like one way they could have like helped with that is to have some kind of like stay a while and listen, you know, back in Dornegal, maybe where, you know, Shaw is there with Flynn and they have some kind of like conversation where Shaw was like, I was really worried about you when I heard you were like in Dalaran when it exploded or were taken by the Nerubians or whatever.
It exploded. He was taken by Nerubians. And what does his boyfriend got to say? Nothing. It's like, whatever. You know what? And this is the thing. Shaw and Flynn's dialogue in-game is prickly. It isn't...
Right, you could be forgiven for thinking that they hate each other if, like, all you know of them is through, like, the game.
Yeah, that they're not really like that. It's like, whoa. And I know that some people are really into, like, the quarreling couple, but like you said, so it really needs time to develop other aspects of the relationship, or it's intensely grinding, I think. I think it's like, again, it's like the old quipper, the quipping character, the sassy character. Enough. Please, you need time to build these characters.
And this is, I think, what we're getting at when we say, oh, there needs to be like more queer characters in the main story, is that you would have that time to actually develop a relationship, you know, between two characters over time. So you would have some opportunities to see them fighting. Maybe like the majority of stuff that they do is like quarreling, but you also you spend time with them. So you have like these intimate moments where they do express concern for one another, or maybe they go on a date or something like that.
And they actually seem to be genuinely enjoying each other's company.
Or you have a cutscene where they're hugging or kissing or something like that. But in order to have that, they need to be in the story. They need to be somewhat main characters for that to happen, you know? Like, we have seen Ilaria and Tyralian's relationship develop.
Come back to me.
I always do.
Or Thrall and Agra's.
And I will proudly be your mate, Rowan. In this world, or any other.
Or Gen and Mia's, you know, there have been like several quest lines about the Greymanes, like the Worgen Heritage quest line and stuff like that.
Remind you of anyone, dear? She did not inherit her temper from me.
Sylvanas and Nathanos were in a book. They have like a moment. If you're a Sylvanas loyalist, you get this like extra cutscene where they call each other. Nathanos calls Sylvanas like my love or something like that. They have this like intimate moment by Sylvanas's like family tower in the Ghostlands.
Safe journey, Nathanos.
Safe journey, my love.
That's because they're in the story. They're like featured prominently. The writers care about them and like telling their story. So that's kind of like what we want for the queer characters, you know, in addition to we want what the heterosexual characters get in Warcraft.
And this is the thing, that plausible deniability. When we're saying that Flynn and Shaw interact in game, like they're not really quite fond of each other. The thing is that the plausible deniability of that is when needed, the World of Warcraft devs can turn around and be like, they're friends. My biggest pet peeve, the sanctity of male friendship or female friendship, if it's two women, which you often see this in fan communities that people will stop and go, but what about the importance of friendship?
Right, usually in response to the dominance of like same-sex pairings, you know, in the community, they'll be like, oh, but what about a friendship?
The sanctity of friendship.
The sanctity of friendship, yeah.
The sacred beloved bond of two men, you know, that is just friendship. No homo. We have enough homo.
It completely ignores the fact that when you're in a relationship with someone, you're often friends with them first, or they are your best friend. That's like a thing. So it's like, why not both? Why can't they be romantic and friends, you know?
Yes, and not only that, but the thing is that this doesn't apply the opposite way around. As much as people online and communities tend to say, well, I see so many gay couples, but there's not enough MF couples, which is, first of all, is absolutely because may I just say, like, come on, be for real. But the thing is, in game, a man and a woman cannot be friends. There will need to be some sort of level of, are they a couple? Oh my God, they're so romantic. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like, we actually see this. I'm going to say this. We see this with Favorite and Anduin. I was biting my tongue. I was like, oh, here we go. As soon as I saw the handhold in game.
There is no darkness so deep that the light cannot reach us. Just Be here with me. Now, breathe.
And I like that moment. I'm going to say this. I really like Anduin's story in War Within. I think they could have taken it farther, but it was still enjoyable. But the thing is that Anduin and Faerun could not just stay friends. This is the thing about the actual reality of the sanctity of two men being friends or two women. Can't they just be sisters? Can't they just be brothers? Can't they just respect the sanctity of friendship? Well, let's see some MF relationships respect the sanctity of friendship first, shall we?
I know, right? It's like, oh, what about the friendship between Anduin and Faerun? Like, can't you make the same argument there?
Exactly, but the thing is in reality, a man and a woman engaging in even standing next to each other, mild friendship, it should be romantic. We will never see that with two people of the same gender being pushed as eagerly. Like the communities, like queer communities will, but there is an immediate and an aggressive pushback by straight fans or fans who don't want to see that relationship occur. And it is always then usually said, can't they just be friends? Can't two men just be friends without, I don't know, having gay sex? Well, too bad for you, random commenter. I think there should be gay sex in every friendship. There we go.
Yeah, you see this a lot with Anduin and Baratheon. It's like, oh, well, can't they just be friends or can't they just be enemies?
He said they were brothers. They said they were brothers.
Why do they need to be paired together? And then there's always the women who are paired with Anduin, usually to kind of like offset that.
You can see the desperation in people saying they should be friends, they should be friends. And it's like,
I feel like this is like a common thing in like fandom communities when there's like usually two men, because two men together, those are usually the most common pairings in fandoms for reasons we won't delve into because we'll be here forever, about how like male characters tend to like get more of like a fandom around them than female characters. But usually like in response to the larger like homosexual pairing, there'll be like people trying to like pair either one or both of the characters off with like women in the franchise, being like, oh no, this is the real relationship, this is like deeper, this is like more important than this other frivolous relationship.
And I'm actually going to go into a point here, but we'll sort of like just continue on that sort of idea. And the idea of like pointing that out, there's sort of a desperation to make sure queer fans know their place. And
this happened with like Shaw and Flynn, like when that pairing started to become big, suddenly people were like, oh no, it's Shaw and Valera. That's the real relationship here.
I remember that.
There was one conversation in particular. There was like a stay a while and listen or something between Shaw and Valera, and a certain sect of the community was like, no, Shaw and Valera are clearly a couple now. Like, what are you? You people are stupid. Like, you're just like trying to force your gay agenda on us. It's clearly Shaw and Valera.
And what of you, Shaw? What is there for Stormwind's spymaster to do in a time of peace?
You know as well as I that a true spy never rests. There is always a new conspiracy to uncover. That said, I may find a bit of time for myself.
Just yourself?
There is someone I would like to get to know better. But such things are best taken slowly, carefully.
Spoken like a true spy. Just remember, happiness is a fleeting thing. Find it while you can, Shaw.
Perhaps I will, Valera. Perhaps I will.
Even then, right, this was a later point that we wanted to bring up, but I'll bring it up now because I think this is a good time. The idea that a lot of people in the community don't think they're being homophobic by saying stuff like this. This is what I was saying before. No one is not homophobic. Even gay people, we have to like get over our own inbuilt biases and issues in regards to approaching that. Being homophobic isn't just hate crimes and slurs, right? It's the idea and the inherent idea that somewhere deep and dark in your mind, that the idea that queer love, the relationship between two men or two women or a person who's transgender, etc., is lesser. And it is not as valid and complex and deeply emotional as the relationship between a man and a woman, that these relationships are given credence. When it's a man and a woman, it's real, as with a capital R, it's real. The idea of a relationship between two men or two women, it's frivolous.
It's just fanfic.
But this is the thing, it traverses into real life too. People do not give credence to actual relationships. Like, it will never be as real as a relationship between a man and a woman. You know, this is the whole argue point of all these like Christo-fascists and stuff like that, that it just is never given the same sort of credence. And the thing is that you may have a very mild thing being like, why can't just two men be friends? And it's like, well, why does them having a relationship upset you so much? Why does it, and even when you're, I don't mind them having a relationship, but why now? Why must you say this now? Why are you saying this? What is the impulse for you to say this? And why do you give credence to the idea that two men in a relationship can't be friends? That their relationship, when it is romantic, can't be loving, and it can't be a friendship, and it can't have that sort of emotional complexity? That's an issue with you that's saying that. That's the worrying thing. And this is the thing, that people don't identify that as homophobic, because deep down, deep in their darkest part, they do not believe that a gay relationship, whether it's between two women or two men, it's just sexual. It's sexual and it's cheap and it's not valid. It can't be deep and emotional like the relationship between a man and a woman. It has none of that validity, and it has that ancient, the feminine essence. That it sort of verts into those sorts of ideas of thinking. To me, it's very bizarre, because as soon as someone starts says, what about the friendships though? I just want to say, what about the relationships between men? And because they're allowed to be friends and they're also allowed to be in a relationship. But as soon as it's the idea of two men be in a relationship, the relationship is suddenly, to you, the person who is saying this, can't have that complexity or emotional depth that a relationship between a man and a woman can have. I think that's it's not just a World of Warcraft issue, that's a fandom issue, that's a community issue, because I think a lot of people actually talking about that haven't really examined their own mindsets or really looked at themselves in a mirror and thought, why do I think these things? What is my compulsion to think these things? It's not a cool response. You do start to realize things about yourself, and that's what people don't like to do. And that's why I always try and say, it's like, it's okay. We all say racist things, say homophobic things, no matter who we are. This is a human issue, society issue, but it's whether you can recognize those and address those.
This is like why I think it's like so important that the devs and like Blizzard in general are like very clear, like, yes, this is a queer relationship that we're writing, is that I feel like that also trickles into fandom discussions when you're trying to make the case for, oh, this could be flirting, or this could be interpreted as, you know, a queer relationship. It's harder to make a case for a queer relationship or like a transgender character in the community than it is for a heterosexual pairing or heterosexual attraction, because it's taken less seriously. It's seen as quote unquote just fanfic, just speculation, that kind of thing. That's unfortunately why I think it's like important that Blizzard is clear on that point when they are writing something. They'll be like, yes, so there's no question, because people will take the devs as like a source of authority on that, you know, so they're kind of like the arbiters of that. Unfortunately, the onus is kind of on them, because there will always be that question and there will always be that discounting, or that people won't take the queer relationship as seriously. Like one example of this is like the Stelagosa and Valtois. Like a lot of people interpreted their interactions in Legion as flirting, like their whole quest line.
If you are going to poke at a ley line, at least make sure it's the right spot. Try a little bit to the right.
I am not poking it. I am tapping. I suppose it could work there. This final tap will allow me to steer the flow of energy like the rudder of a ship. Right around here should do the trick.
You can do that? Perhaps you know a thing or two after all.
My goodness. Was that a compliment? You go on ahead and inform Thalysra. I have a few questions for our friend here.
Yes? What do you want to know?
Do you actually visualize the lines? Or is it more that you sense them? Is it a constant sensation? Or can you turn it on and off?
And I think it was like later confirmed that that was the dev's intention, but that wasn't taken seriously until it was like bluntly stated in game during the anniversary event, where your character is like upfront, like, hey, are you guys in a relationship? And there's that confirmation.
My love, I'll be happy if I stay here with you. You know, it's like, I'll do anything. I'll eat the terrible celebration popcorn as long as I can stay by your side. It's nice and it's clear. It's nice and it's clear. That's all exactly so. That's all we're asking for. Is that sort of, it doesn't need to be like a guy coming up to the screen and be like, I am bisexual.
I mean, like, that might be just like what they have to do given the state of the community and like the game now.
Runs up to the screen. I'm bi.
As much as the devs would like to say like, oh, we want to like keep it subtle, they kind of can't given the state of the community. They kind of have to be blunt about it because it's just not taken seriously.
And that's why I always say openly queer. I'm like, openly queer relationships, because the thing is that no one straight playing this game will go, damn, this relationship between this woman and man, so bisexual. No, they're not going to, because that isn't the norm. It isn't the default. And if we know anything about the World of Warcraft community, is they will fight tooth and nail to preserve that norm and default. They will fight, they will besmirch, they will do anything to just keep that set, basically.
A good example of this is Anduin. The wiki in particular is like very stringent about like what can be listed as like queer or not, and they are very sure that Anduin is heterosexual. Every single instance that Anduin has blushed at a woman, has like looked at a woman, has like thought about a woman in like terms of like more than friends.
Yeah, Anduin has noticed her breast boobily.
Every time a woman has breasted boobily around Anduin, Rin has been meticulously documented and cited on his wiki page, on the female characters wiki page, on Rathian's wiki page. They want to make it very clear there's nothing homosexual going on in Anduin Rin. That is documented very clearly, like on the wikis.
Let's actually talking about the community with a little bit of like dev handshake of friendship. Speaking about Anduin, because we might as well talk about the elephant in the room. Anduin Rin, what a controversial figure. Let's talk about the lore watch.
Oh, the lore watch thing. Okay, should I get into that now?
I want to be controversial. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this.
Okay, so this kind of ties into what we were talking at like the very beginning of this discussion with blood monarchies. I don't know what you would call it, like monarchies in general, and needing like an heir that kind of like sparked a lot of conversation.
And the validity of relationships between men and women, while dismissing the idea, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, dismissing the idea that a queer relationship, a relationship in this case between two men, could be even as slightly deep or as important as a relationship between a man and a woman. But I'm just saying we need to study our inherent biases. So please go on, Sil.
Right. I wanted to talk about this because this is always like kind of stuck with me like a little bit, not the podcast itself. So Lore Watch is a podcast that kind of goes into topics of lore. So they talk about the lore of World of Warcraft.
Hello and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore in the games of Blizzard Entertainment.
It's a very good podcast. I used to listen to it regularly when I was commuting and stuff like that before the COVID times. I kind of stopped listening to podcasts since then. It's nothing about Lore Watch. So there was one Lore Watch podcast episode that was called Who Should Be King Anduin's Queen? This podcast is like a big Q&A podcast where they're answering listener questions, and this was just of course like right when I'm trying to give my big speech about this Lore Watch podcast. I have to log back in and
that piece, and she vanished from existence.
She's like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want anything to do with this.
Bye. Peace out.
I hate this game so much.
I was playing World of Warcraft. I hate this game.
Oh,
this.
God.
I've been here for 20 years, actually. 19 years. 19 years. You can't say to us, you don't like this game. We fucking love this game and I hate it.
Love it and hate it. I'm keeping this in. I'm keeping part of this in so people know just like how much I'm suffering. Okay. Anyway, so like I said, this book, Before the Storm, kind of sparked a lot of conversation about who Anduin was going to marry and have kids with because of this like bit in Before the Storm where Gen is like confronting him about it. He's like, you kind of need children because of the Rin line, you know, and stuff, blah, 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 blah. So there was a listener question in this podcast that kind of was like, I recorded it. I will put in what is actually said, but it's a question that basically asks, who do you think is going to be Anduin's queen?
Question number 1. Gen wants Anduin to get wife and make babies. Who do you see as a viable option for romantic or story reasons?
And the hosts kind of like deal with it just like as it is. They're like, let's like go through like a bunch of women and kind of like discuss like how valid or not valid they would be as like a choice for queen. And to their credit, they kind of shoot down every single woman that they bring up.
I'd love to see more Yrel. I'd love to know what's going on there, but I feel like it's not just far-fetched for the reasons you might have listed, but also because we don't even know if she's alive. Vanessa Van Cleef is... if that ended up happening, it would be because Vanessa Van Cleef came up with a fake ID, inserted herself into Stormwind as a noble, got him to fall in love with her, and married him as part of a plot to kill him. I'll just straight up tell you right now, I think that Tess Greymane only has one way it could go, in that she does not seem in the slightest bit interested in marrying anybody.
Yep. Oh yeah, she's not on that boat.
I think Talia has too much in her life to be slotted into this role. I don't think it would be good character development.
They kind of end the podcast with like, he's probably not going to have a queen anytime soon. He's clearly not in like a space to date right now.
I don't think Anduin Rin is going to have kids anytime soon.
I tend to agree.
Gen can push for it all he wants. The combination of the fact that most of the candidates are not suitable, and keep in mind, of course, that Anduin's mother, Tiffin, was just a Stormwind noble. It's quite possible they could just bring some other Stormwind noble up. It doesn't have to be any of these characters. But I really don't think Anduin's life... Like, again, in Shadowlands, Anduin gets kidnapped and taken to Land of the Dead. And I have no idea if he gets out by the end of the opening experience. There's a lot going on here, guys. I think you're going to have to wait on the babies.
And there's like an accompanying article. I don't know the logistics of like the website and the podcast, like how tied together they are, but there is also like an article that's like titled something very similar. 3 candidates for the future Queen of Stormwind. And they kind of discuss like the similar choices. So the choices are Tess Greymane, Talia Fordragon, Vanessa Van Cleef, Lillian Voss is mentioned as a joke, Yrel, and Valera.
We're in shambles here. We're in shambles. Wife market is in shambles. These choices.
So you have Tess Greymane, who is like a fan favorite to be paired with Anduin.
I'm just going to put a little asterisk there. Popular, but to our listeners here, popular with who? That's maybe a question you can ruminate on, because going to AO3 is a desert.
In the hierarchy of serious lore theorizing, Tess is like at the top because she is a princess. She's like Queen of Gilneas, so she's also royalty. She's like around Anduin's age. Gen has already proposed her as a candidate. So people are like, oh yeah, of course they would be paired together. That would make sense. So she's like the quote unquote, to quote this article directly, she's the obvious choice. According to Blizzard Watch, she is the obvious choice. And then there's Talia, who is also a popular choice because she was also a woman who's like around Anduin's age, who spoke to him like once, which is like the criteria that we're dealing with here.
They stood next to each other.
They stood next to each other, and they had a conversation. She was a very popular ship during BFA because, again, there are very few women in this game who are like around Anduin's age and who would be like a good marriage candidate for him. So there's Vanessa Van Cleef, who hates his guts, so that's like not...
Like, come on, don't do this to Vanessa.
He's around his age, but no, there's no way she would date the monarchy.
The Human Heritage questline be like, oh my god, Vanessa's like, thank you, King Anduin. I'm like, okay, what have you done with Vanessa, and who is this body double that you've got to replace her? Like, come on, be for real. If there's anyone in this game that deserves to kill Anduin Rin, like straight up kill him,
Vanessa.
It's Vanessa. Oh, wait, hold on. Talanji too. I think Talanji and Vanessa actually have they should, have fair, because it's like two people of, well, Vanessa used to be of a noble standing house, technically with her father, of a certain level of respectability. And Talanji, who is straight up a queen.
It's very weird to me that Talanji didn't make this list, because even though she does have every reason to hate Anduin, she meets the criteria.
She's 18. Yeah, she was 18 when Anduin was 18, so yeah, probably because she's a horde character.
She meets the criteria that the other women have on this list, which is that they're sort of around his age and have kind of spoken to him. They haven't spoken, but all right, where was I going? Sorry, I lost the thread of why I was talking about this. The thing is that they go through each female candidate, and they kind of discuss the pros and cons of each one, mostly the cons, but they take each one as a serious option. And then they do give lip service to the fact that a lot of people, some people, I don't actually know the numbers of what percentage Randuin fans make up in the fandom, but they do pay lip service to the fact that a lot of people want Anduin and Rathian to get together, but it's only referenced as a joke.
I feel like I would be doing a disservice to everybody if I didn't point out that a whole lot of people want Anduin to hook up with Rathian.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out there that people want that. I quite frankly don't care who Anduin dates or marries or has kids with or doesn't have kids with. None of that matters to me in the slightest.
It's not taken seriously. They don't go through the fact that oh, well, he's the Black Dragon, and Anduin's had a bad history with Black Dragons, or, Rathian, he's a candidate to be aspect, he's looking for the they don't get into it. They don't take him seriously.
Who knows? But I don't think it's going to be for a while. Maybe end of Shadowlands as Anduin sits down and goes, what have I done with my life? Man, that was horrible. Maybe I should back off for a little bit.
Rathian comes out of the shower and is it's all right.
Rathian,
I'm not letting it go.
Yeah.
I'm not letting it go.
Rathian,
I don't even ship the two of them, but I'm not letting it go.
And they don't have any male candidates. They don't go through any men who would be a good match for Anduin. Even if they don't think Rathian is a good match, it's who is going to be Anduin's queen. It's the default is
the baby producer.
The baby producer, right. And they don't talk about any male characters. They don't even bring up the possibility that Anduin could be bi at all. That's not a question.
Well, he can't be bi. That's the thing. He can't be bi in this situation.
He can't be bi, and he can't choose a man as his partner.
And this is what leads me to my point here. He can't be bi, and he can't choose a man as his partner, because the sheer acceptance that Anduin Rin is bi can't work, because he needs a cis woman with working ovaries and a womb to produce heirs for him. And we could talk about what about the thruples? I bring up issue with writing thruples, and especially with the limited time and space that Blizzard would have to write a thruple. They would not do a good job. Like I said, it would be a couple and a awkward third wheel in every thruple situation.
A lot of the time when a thruple is brought up, especially with Rathian as the third person, is Rathian, he's the third wheel. So it's never it's very rarely, I say never, there's actually a very good fanfic where he isn't, where they talk about it, but most 90% of the time he is the third wheel. He is the least important part of this relationship. Anduin has his queen, and Rathian is just the one that they fuck occasionally.
His annoying foot body.
Yeah.
The annoying foot body. They will be so annoyed by Rathian, the other couple. They will be so annoyed by Rathian. He is so annoying. He's a drain on them. Why is he so annoying? But I guess he's a good lay. And that makes me want to throw the fuck up. So I'm sorry to everyone listening. I just want to fucking puke when I see stuff like that.
And I'm not trying to discount relationships where you do have someone who is just kind of I'm sure there's many fulfilling relationships where that dynamic is a thing. It's just very irritating that it's never Rathian is co-kings with Anduin and then Talia is the fuck buddy. That's never an option. It's always Anduin with a queen, and then Rathian is the third wheel. That's what's kind of annoying to me, is that, and it goes back to what we said about same-sex relationships just not being taken as seriously, or not being seen as on the level as the main heterosexual pairing.
Like I said, whether that's conscious or subconscious by the people talking about this. And I'm sure that also queer people often need to get over this.
And even if Blizzard did decide to go that route where Rathian is the sometimes answer to Anduin's bisexuality, it's like they need to actually write that into the game. There needs to be a short story, there needs to be a quest line, you know, there needs to be a stay a while and listen. And it would be nice if Rathian had a relationship with the female partner too. That's another thing that often gets overlooked, is like they kind of need a dynamic too, right? That was just what I wanted to complain about that podcast. Not really the podcast itself, just kind of like the framing and just kind of like how when Anduin comes into the conversation.
Exactly. Opinions start to get a bit wonky. He is written as a straight man. From every bit of dynamics and content that we have at the moment, we can't give credit to the writers that Anduin is bisexual. And even if he is to be depicted in a bisexual throuple, you need to be careful about the dynamics in regards to that with your limited amount of time and space to engage with said relationship. Because much like in real life, there's going to be one person in this third wheel and it feels very awkward, essentially. Even speaking as a bisexual woman, like I said, it's a very difficult thing to sort of impose upon people, that we do need to be aware about how these things are written and author's intent. And what you think as a fan would be a cool thing isn't essentially the be's-alls and ends about interpretation of this character and why openly queer representation in big media, not talking about indies or your own works or, you know, like self-published stuff and things like that, why it's so important to have two men in a relationship and two women in a relationship, etc., or openly trans characters, is because it's an act of normalization. Because like we've just been talking about, it's clear that a lot of people, whether consciously or subconsciously, don't see a relationship between two men or two women as valid as a relationship between a man and a woman, regardless of their sexuality. And that's the really sad thing. And that's the thing about a queer community. If you want to engage with the queer community, you need to look out for uplifting your community and seeking the best outcomes for other people. We need to protect the most vulnerable members of our community. And we also need to represent those members who are the more underrepresented members of our community wisely. You like using our heads, not just saying what I want. You have to put that aside when it's in a community. And that's just for queer people. For the homophobes, the open homophobes in the community, they can get fucked, and I want them to be deeply angry and mad and furious that there's men kissing or women kissing. So there's my takes. I want those guys to be mad. And I know that people who are straight come on the internet and go, damn, there's too many gay people on here. But where else are people going to be gay in this day and age, man? Like, look outside. Look out your window. Look at the people kissing on Netflix. The majority are men. Dare I say, you go outside and you see the heterosexuals. So there's my opinion outside that. And yeah, so I think that part is very much our personal opinion about this. I'm just having to think about if we've covered everything before. Yeah, we've talked about the high levels of homophobia on community stuff and actual forums, stuff like that. The idea that a queer ship or queer characters can hold the same depth and importance as a cis character or a heterosexual couple. The idea that open and clear queer rep is important to make queer players feel welcome in the community, and trying to avoid the writing stereotypes when you're writing a queer couple in game of having their reveal at the end of their quest. Queen Ansarek. Was it Ansarek? No. Sorry. Widow Arachni and Queen Nephris. Sorry.
Nephris, I've been apart from you for too long. Do not ask me to suffer your absence for another moment.
Abomination hurts. Leave me, Naya.
Never. After all that has happened, all that we've done, it was worth it to hear you say my name again. You needn't speak, my dear. I am here at your side. I will not leave you. All is as it should be.
That was at the end of their quest. It was easily missable. It was still sweet. It got to me. I was really like, but in reality, you got to look where it was. It placed at the end of the quest where people could skip it. I'd say a majority of players never saw it.
That was like a tough one for me because like I can understand from a storytelling perspective why you would want to keep that as like a reveal at the end, but it also kind of like recontextualizes like everything about the widow Arachne's character and why she's doing what she's doing. So it's like very important character stuff. It's something that I wish had been more upfront, like from the beginning. Like even if you don't hear it from her directly, like maybe like some of her helpers, you know, kind of talk about like, oh yeah, she was like in a relationship with the queen.
Yeah, or how like intense their relationship was, you know, or like they never left each other's sides, you know, or maybe have a special word.
It's like the problem with Shaw and Flynn, like all over again. There's like legitimate narrative reasons why they wouldn't be like open about their relationships or very chatty about it. But at the same time, you could still do it that way. And I kind of wish that like that had been like a draw, like something like with Baldur's Gate, like that's something that they advertise the game with, like, oh, we have like a sapphic couple, you know, they're a main part of this big storyline that we have about the Nerubians, you know, this grand exploration into Nerubian culture. And then we have this like sapphic relationship at the core of that. That would have been interesting, especially if that had played into like the cinematics and stuff like that, especially that that one that kind of like went into like how Zaltath corrupted Ansurect.
Dare I say so? There was a time in Wales history where I think if they would have really gone hard on queer couples, it would have had a better outcome in their community today. The queer couples would have been more, air quotes, normalized within the game. I think they've slightly missed that. I think they've slightly missed the bus on that. They're going to have a lot of pushback, like with Faerun as a black character. When Rathian was first introduced, many years ago. Like, yes, Rathian does have a lot of aspects of Orientalism in his design. I think he was an excellent character showing a teenager, I will say that. But, you know, there's certain aspects that are a little bit about his character, right? However, on Rathian's introduction all those many years ago, there was very little pushback from a brown character being introduced in a sense of him just being brown. Like, it was a little bit, but not huge. These days, the grifters are well enacted. The trouble is that social media has made grifting and outrage content a lot more accessible, basically. That's why Faerun's had such a rough time. Like, trust me, there's still been racism growing towards Rathian over the years, and especially, it becomes especially forefront when it's combined with the homophobia towards Rathian. That Rathian is a straight character. He's a character with no sexuality. But let's just say this, especially intertwined with like talks of homosexuality, the racism zooms up, by the way. But back in the day, it was pretty low key. The whinges were tended to be overlooked, essentially, in that sort of case. And then you have like characters like Faerun being introduced now, like masses of like openly racist sort of like statements about her. And like I said, if Rathian came back in the lens again, I would just suggest that again the racism starts ramping up again. But there was a time that was probably a sweet spot where they could have done a lot more introducing diverse characters, but because Blizzard are coward entertainment sometimes, I think they slightly missed that. I mean, how they would have had a lot of positive news articles if they would have been like Blizzard's first openly gay main character, a certain blonde main character who was gay. That would have been received with homophobia, but a lot more community support. Like I said, these days, like we were sort of scratching our heads about why the War Within has had less queer characters up in front, like Widow Arachne and Queen Nephris. The idea that the Earthen technically have no gender, but they are still gendered by via stereotyped appearance. And notably, I'm raising a finger, the only Earthen that were shown to be in romantic relationships were all a male-presenting Earthen and a female-presenting Earth. So what does that say? We live in a society, again, joke makeup.
I mean, like, Anduin still gets, like, homophobic comments regardless because he's still perceived as queer because he's a softer healer character. So, like, that stuff happens anyway, but Blizzard just thinks it's more of a priority to make sure the fan base knows that he's straight, actually. That's their priority there.
Yeah. Gotta keep our priorities straight. Like many people, I made a post about the lack of queer rep in the War Within, and a lot of people responded back with social climate at the moment. And I think, look, the trouble is we've got to that point where you need to. And I think that's the main thing is that despite these people who slew homophobic rage, death threats, you know, RAPE threats and stuff like that. I mean, I know that. I'm a lawyer. I've had all things before. You need to understand, though, you have to do it, or else they do win in the end. You can't just be like, well, we can't. You got to do it. There was a sweeter spot where you could have done it and it was well received. Blizzard has missed that, I do think, like I said, but they still can do it. But they need to be brave about it. Because the thing is people who say, I'm never playing this game again. Well, see you in 1 week when you got your arenas to do, man. Like, they ain't going to stop playing. World of Warcraft's play base is already an older group of players. I'd say that most of the grifters, most of the ones who complain about World of Warcraft, ain't even giving you a sub. Just fucking do it. Add diverse characters. Add diverse stories. Say it with your whole chest. Don't fucking pussy out like you did in The War Within. Because we all saw it in The War Within. You didn't go above and beyond in The War Within. I think it was like bare minimum. Like, there's the hurdle on the ground, totally flat to the ground, and they stepped over it. And they were like, ta-da! And ain't enough, man. Like I said, the way that because you've let it get to a point, the only way that you can back your community that is this combative towards you is not to give them an inch. Because I know, like I said, I know I deal with these sorts of people in my work. Notably, the people in my work are kind of scared of me. So, like I said, you got to put your foot down. You got to put your foot down. You can't let them have this over you. Like, oh, they sent me death threats. So fucking what? You know, like, if you need to be less online, be less online. I don't talk about I don't go, time to friend all my clients. God, I'm not friending them. I'm not following the social media.
It would be nice if they showed up, you know, for their queer community, if nothing else, because, like, you know, the devs are kind of like respected. They're like the tastemakers. They're kind of the, I don't know how to put it. They kind of lead the discussion on, especially on like social media. Like, people will like follow them, be like, oh, what does this dev have to say about that? You know,
without naming names too. I'm just going to interrupt you there. They can make a ship that has no following. They can make a ship that has no following popular, if you get my drift.
Right. People pay attention to the things that they like and dislike.
That they will engage with.
Because they tend to like and support the stuff that kind of more falls in line with like marketing and like what is going to like happen in the game. So if they are openly in support of like queer couples in the game or queer readings of the game, stuff like that, then people will, to a certain extent, you know, you always have the homophobes who will resist it. But
like I said, you got to be brave.
Yeah, you got to be brave. You can't just leave it up to the queer devs either. That has to come from like the cis straight devs, which is why, okay, so maybe this is kind of a time to segue into that Steve Newser quote, because like I think I kind of wanted to give him some credit for his statements.
Okay, Steve Newser gets one credit.
Right, he wrote the Visage Day story, and he had he's like said some things about, let me just read his quote. I think it's a valuable thing that we show these different perspectives on Azeroth and want to really make clear that there's people who sometimes say, well, Warcraft is this medieval fantasy game and those kinds of things weren't talked about in medieval times, so they shouldn't be in Azeroth. But I disagree with that. I think that Azeroth is a world of magic and a world of possibilities. And one of the things that's really important to know is that in Azeroth, you can love who you want, you can identify the way that you want, and all of those things are possibilities. We just want the game to be able to reflect that through its storylines and through its character customization options. And we're really excited about that. As far as I know, Steve Newser is like a straight cis man. I do want to give him some credit for saying that and for kind of like setting the
Wiki guy, get on that.
It is on the wiki. It is in the page on gender and sexuality in the wiki.
Steve Newser, the truth come out. Steve Newser is straight. Holy shit. Okay, so we do got to give credit where credit is due. Like I'm like I said, I'm a bit of a hater, and I'm like, you can do better.
Yeah, what is your opinion?
The trouble is that I tend to put my own ideas of how I hold myself and conduct myself onto other people's self, and I'm like, the thing is that my usual ending is you can do better. And I think that is the constant rut that every person finds themselves in and thinks ourselves. I could do better, you know? But I genuinely mean it. Though, if you approach something with honesty and with good intentions, and you will to reach out to your community, it will show. You also got to be a bit brave. You can't be a little bit pussyfooted. I would argue that that's a lot to do sometimes with it being a big corpo, you know, because I have no love for big corpos. But even still, how you conduct yourself as a dev or a community member in the meantime, you should be aiming to uplift the people around you. I know that a joke seems easy, or dismissive behaviors, or saying, well, that person, that's something I didn't like. Exactly. You need to put that aside. Either just move on from it or see how you can adjust your behavior to then engage with it in a way that uplifts the other queer people in your community, or engage with queer people in your community. If you find yourself straight, like, examine your own behavior. It's not scary. This is the thing. People always be like, whoa, it's not scary. It's okay. Like, people will genuinely, like, if you approach things with a good sort of like, and I know it's hard to in days of social media, but you can approach things in a very well-meaning way and want to and uplift people, and people will appreciate you for that. When it comes down to it, devs, to the actual writers, to actual Blizzard, please be mindful about how you write queer stories and do better. Stop making your queer characters be written like they just don't like being in each other's like vicinity. Oh, it's cheesy. No, good. God, every straight relationship you write in this game is cheesy as fuck. Give your queer characters a little bit of like, give them a little bit of the ham and cheese.
Queer characters, they get such little screen time as it is, so you have to make the most of what you do with that screen time. If they're not going to be major characters, then you kind of need to make the most of the little time that you have and make it blunt.
Make it embarrassingly fucking cheesy romantic. Like, don't try and be smart and be like, they're sassing each other, because your straight players are not going to see that. They're going to buckle down and again hit your queer players with, see, they don't like each other. They hate each other. Just think, just give your allowances.
Shaw had a pleasant conversation with Valera.
Perhaps I will, Valera. Perhaps I will.
Have him have a conversation with Flynn where he's like, you take so many risks. Like, you have to remember, to take care of yourself if I'm not there, because I can't take care of you all the time, but it means the world to me that, you know, you're safe. Make it cheesy. Just make it cheesy. Make it cheesy.
WoW is cheesy as it is. It's like, now is not the time to suddenly be conservative about...
Be clever. Air quotes. Yeah.
Clever.
Air quotes. Be clever
subtle.
About things. I use clever with sarcasm in my tone. Give that same allowance to your queer couples or future queer couples that you would allow for your straight couple.
The wiki doesn't allow speculation on their LGBTQ page, their gender and sexuality page, so you have to make it
clear.
You have to make it clear.
Balls to the walls here, guys. Just be mindful of your queer community members, much like every underrepresented part of your community. Just be sage. Make good choices. I know that working in an industry that like puts you under the crunch is a fucking hellhole, but just be wise. If you can't do it to perfection in your work, be thoughtful online. You know, like that, it's fine. Like I said, I'll always remember the mean things, but you know, like I have very few of the good memories. You know what I mean? So they just need to be a little bit more aware of that. So
don't make fun of your queer fans for having a queer reading of the text. That's not good. But in all seriousness, part of interacting with fiction is like what you take from it. You can put a story out there, but it's ultimately the reader who's going to be interpreting your story and kind of like filtering it through their perspectives. And in a world where we don't have as much queer fiction as we do heterosexual fiction, queer people are going to take queer readings of your story. And at the very least, you know, you could not make fun of them when they do that.
Yeah, at minimum.
When they bring their perspectives to your story, you know, don't make fun of that. I feel like that's the lowest bar, but
that's the lowest
you know,
bar. And also give credence, like when fans want openly queer relationships, like don't try and create a false equivalence to how important, like, and I'm speaking again, I'm using my bi card, I'm whipping my bi card out here. I'm like, please don't say it's just important to maybe show a man and a woman in a relationship, regardless of their sexuality. Would be different if they're trans. But by the way, all my conversations during this, I always have like little asterisks. But if they're trans, though, you know, but because trans people need all of our love and affection at the moment and to be uplifted,
especially now.
Just don't try and create a false equivalence about like importance of showing things. Show a man and a woman kissing on TV, it's fine. Show two men kissing on TV, you'll get death threats. You know, like, please be aware of that. Like, I know, and that's to the community as well. Just be aware of that. I suppose it's that joke of it's like all these leftists get together and they're too busy arguing over minutiae to do anything in the community, which is an experience I've had in real life. Good old community action. So good old community action. But yes, just be aware of stuff. We need to have that openly queer rep. Don't punch down at your queer community. Like, you're already in trouble. Like with World of Warcraft community is. I'll be a grouch. I'll always be a grouch. But like, there's a lot of people in WoW's community who are queer who deserve that sort of like respect on regards to like the understandings and things that they'd like to see, stuff like that. Like I said, I'll always be a grouch. I think it'll just be the thing. But like, so many people in this community have been very thoughtful and caring about how they want to be interpreted and what they would like to see. Like that deserves some respect, gotta say.
Yeah, it's not easy putting yourself out there as a queer person in this very heterosexual cis male fandom. So I think that deserves a little more respect than it gets, you know, a lot of the time.
No, it is not a male name.
It's a difficult thing, isn't it? Like I said, it's people going to be people. So otherwise, from that, please put the fucking LGBT event in. Like, who gives a shit?
Give us pride. That would be great.
Give us pride. Fuck the legal ramifications. Let me talk to the Blizzard lawyers. I want to talk to them. I want to explain my passions to them.
I would love a cloak that's the lesbian flag. That would be great.
Just some flags, some outfits with like specific colorations on them. Like, come on, guys. Like, just a little bit. Come on, a little bit of pride in here. Come on. I just want the community to start like throwing tomatoes every time. We want the queer flags in here. We'll put Tracer in game. As people listening to this, some of this is our opinion, but like,
yes, we are not speaking from a point of authority on any of this. We're just two queer people with opinions,
just talking about things. Some things that we stated in here are a lot more fact based in like 100% fact. Some of these are our experiences in the WoW community, our lived experiences too. I often talk about lived experiences. Like I said, I've lived a very long life I've lived a very long life in me in my 30s, not even my late 30s.
If nothing else, feel free to use the comments to voice your opinions if you disagree with either of us on any of this.
Throw tomatoes at me. Put tomato emoji if you think Ash is a bit of a dickhead. Don't worry, I'll bear with it. It's fine. You can be like, you dumbass.
The queer community is not a monolith. We are just two members of it. So that disclaimer goes on this.
Also, make Anduin gay.
Yeah, make him gay, Blizzard.
Make him gay. Boo. Chickens. Everyone, tomato. Actually, tomato emojis in comments to throw at Blizzard. We need more tomatoes right now.
Make him gay or make him bi and have him kiss a man. Do it.
This is the thing. I'm a bi woman in a relationship with a woman. Like, fucking do that shit. Do that shit right now. Like, you can be bisexual and be in the same gender relationship. People do be forgetting us bisexuals. So yeah, make him bi. Make him kiss a man. Make him gay. Make him kiss a man. Make him do tax fraud so he can't be king anymore. That's my most controversial opinion here. Anduin's tax.
Anduin commits tax fraud.
Anduin commits tax
That's
fraud.
The plot of The Last Titan.
Ends like a Monty Python bit where Anduin just gets arrested after the final bell. Anyway, still, thank you for joining and like having a nap with me today. Us two gossing and having some tea here. So, and hopefully, like our perspectives today, at least were interesting, or like something that people listening may agree with, may not agree with. That's fine. You know, like I said, lived experience, our opinions. I have my personal tastes. stuff like that. So there we go. Sil, any final words?
No, I think that's it. That's like all I really wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, I certainly did. And hopefully all of our listeners did too. So thank you, everyone, and see you next time.
I'm telling you, don't give me a World of Warcraft. I'll be here all fucking day.